Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and travel's like my favorite thing ever. And today we're going to take a deep dive into how to use travel to improve your English skills with Sarah, our language learning expert.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here.
So Sarah, we both know that traveling can be a little scary if you're not a native English speaker.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're turning that fear into excitement with a deep dive into your favorite holiday destination, a how-to guide for English learners. So get ready to boost your confidence so you can speak English on your dream trip.
Absolutely.
Think of this deep dive as like your personal English language toolkit.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, I want to go to Paris.
Yeah.
We're going to help you articulate WHYY. Paris is your dream destination, and you're going to be practicing your English the whole time.
Yes.
Don't worry, it'll be fun.
Definitely. We want you to learn, but also, feel confident using English in real situations, when you're traveling.
Okay, cool. So step one is choosing that perfect holiday destination, right?
Yeah.
Sarah, what should our listeners think about first?
Well, Mike, it might seem obvious, but you have to choose a destination that really excites you.
Yeah.
When you're passionate about a place, you're more motivated to learn the language, and immerse yourself in the culture.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. If you're not really interested in a place, why spend your precious vacation time there?
Exactly. And a great way to start brainstorming is to write down simple sentences about what you enjoy.
Okay.
For example, you could write something like, I love exploring historical sites and learning about different cultures.
Oh, yeah.
Or, I'm fascinated by modern architecture and cityscapes.
Oh, those examples make me think about when I went to Rome.
Ooh, nice.
Describing, the Colosseum, like how grand it was, or like the Trevi Fountain and all those little details.
Yeah.
Really maybe appreciate Roman history and art even more.
It's a perfect example of how descriptive language can make your travel experience better.
For sure.
But even if you just focus on simple sentences, that's a great place to start. Imagine yourself in your dream location. I will wander through bustling markets, or I will try all the new foods and learn their names in English.
Oh, that's good.
Saying these out loud helps build confidence and fluency.
Yes, and don't let those sentences just sit there on the page.
Exactly.
Record yourself reading them, or watch a video with subtitles about the place you want to go to.
Yeah.
Or find someone to practice with.
Yes. And Mike, that brings us to our next step.
Okay.
Why is this particular destination your favorite?
Great question. So Sarah, what's your favorite holiday destination?
Okay, so I'm drawn to places with a lot of history, and for me, London is just the best.
Oh, nice.
Beyond the famous landmarks like Buckingham Palace and the Tower of London, it's a city where you can practice English by describing the architecture.
Yeah.
From the Gothic cathedrals to the Victorian townhouses.
I see.
The city's history is literally built into the streets.
Yeah.
Plus, there's the chance to talk to locals in English, which is super valuable.
Totally. And London's free museums are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that Roman exhibit we saw a couple years ago?
Oh, yeah.
The mosaics were so well preserved.
I know.
Talking about them in English really made us think about,
Yeah.
the history and how they made them.
Absolutely. And those kinds of museum visits can help you to make more complex sentences.
Yep.
So instead of just, I will eat local food, you could say, I'm excited to try the food and order in English, or I plan to ask the staff about the artifact's history.
Oh, those are good.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, try to make sentences like that about your destination and record yourself saying them to work on your pronunciation and fluency.
Right, and don't forget about other resources.
Yeah.
Listening to podcasts or watching documentaries can teach you new vocabulary, and you can get used to different accents.
Okay, so let's move from dreaming about our trip to actually planning it.
Yes.
Sarah, what are some logistical things our listeners need to think about?
Well, Mike, no matter where you go, you have to have your passport and visa ready to go. And of course, you need a plan for exchanging money and how much you can spend. But think beyond the basics.
Okay.
Do you know how to ask for directions in English?
Yeah.
Can you read a map? Those practical skills can make navigating a new city less stressful.
Oh, man. Speaking of maps, I once tried to take the subway in Tokyo during rush hour without knowing any Japanese.
Oh, wow.
It was an adventure. Luckily, a nice local helped me find my way.
Yeah.
But knowing some phrases like, excuse me, where is? Or can you point me towards would have made things much easier.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's so important to learn those phrases.
Right.
So don't just memorize where is the bus stop.
Okay.
Practice saying, excuse me, do you know which bus goes to?
Okay.
Adding those polite phrases can make a big difference in how people respond to you.
I totally agree. You know, I have a funny story about trying to order food in Spain.
Hold on, Mike, another travel story. You always have the best one.
Well, this one really shows how useful those simple phrases can be.
Okay.
I was at this really cool tapas bar, but I was struggling to describe what I wanted to order.
I see.
Finally, I just gave up and said, "Can you recommend something delicious?"
Yeah.
And pointed at some things on the menu.
Smart.
The waiter smiled, brought me the most amazing food, and even taught me how to say delicious in Spanish.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So that's a good example of how even basic English can lead to some awesome cultural moments.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to the exciting part.
Oh.
Actually exploring.
Yes.
What activities do you think our listeners would enjoy?
Well, that's the beauty of travel.
Yeah.
Everyone likes different things.
Exactly.
Some people might like historical landmarks and museums, while others might want to go hiking or try adventure sports.
Right.
But no matter what you like, think about how you can use English to make those experiences even better.
I love that.
You've just said something I love.
What's that?
One of my favorite travel memories is from when I visited a spice market in Morocco.
Oh.
The colors were so vibrant and the smells were amazing and the sounds of people bartering in all these different languages.
Yeah.
It was sensory overload.
I bet.
Describing those experiences later in English helped me appreciate them even more.
That's awesome. It's a great way to connect language with real life.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, I will visit a castle, you could practice using more descriptive language.
Oh,
Like imagine being there, I'm going to walk through the castle gardens and look at the roses and all the carvings in the stone.
oh wow.
Or I'm going to learn about the castle's history and maybe even try on some armor.
I love how you're making those sentences so vivid.
Thanks.
You know, I'm already planning my next adventure, and I can see myself hiking through the Scottish Highlands.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to climb to the top of Ben Nevis and look out over the scenery and practice my nature vocabulary.
That sounds amazing, Mike.
Yeah.
Remember, practicing with those descriptive sentences can make your trip even more special.
Yeah, definitely. It adds another layer to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, let's talk about one of the best parts of travel. Meeting the locals.
Yeah.
What are some tips for our listeners on talking to people they meet?
Mike, those interactions are like the heart of any travel experience.
Yeah.
They can help us understand the place we're visiting in ways that no book ever could. Even if you're a beginner, don't be shy.
I couldn't agree more. I remember this one time.
Oh, are you about to tell another one of your travel stories, Mike?
You know me so well, but yeah, this story really shows how even a simple hello can lead to like a really amazing connection.
Oh, wow.
So I was in this tiny village in Tuscany,
Okay.
and I was totally lost trying to get back to my hotel.
Uh-oh.
And I saw this old woman taking care of her garden.
Yeah.
So I like worked up all my courage and just said, "Buongiorno." She didn't speak any English, but she like lit up and invited me in for some tea and biscotti.
Oh, that's so sweet.
We spent like an hour just talking with our hands and smiling.
I love that.
And she even drew me a map to get back to my hotel.
That's amazing. And it shows that even if you're not fluent, you know, just trying to connect with people can make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And for those of you listening who might be nervous about starting conversations,
Yeah.
practicing some basic phrases can really help.
Or like what kind of phrases?
Things like, excuse me, could you tell me where? Or do you know a good place to?
Yeah.
Can get the conversation going.
Yeah, and those conversations can turn into like mini language lessons, right?
Totally. I remember being in a cafe in Buenos Aires trying to order coffee in my really bad Spanish. And the barista was so patient, he corrected my pronunciation and even taught me some slang.
Oh, that's cool.
It was just a short interaction, but it made me feel so much more confident using Spanish in real life.
I love those little moments when you learn something new.
Me too.
It's like the whole world becomes your classroom.
Yeah.
Speaking of classrooms, let's give our listeners some exercises they can use to get ready for those real-life conversations.
Great idea. One thing they can do is role-play different situations with a friend or family member.
Oh, okay.
Like imagine checking into a hotel, ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions.
Yeah.
The more you practice before your trip, the easier it will feel when you're actually there.
And don't forget about all the apps and websites that can help.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many that offer interactive language lessons and vocabulary practice.
Right.
You can even find apps just for travel phrases with audio recordings to help you get the pronunciation perfect.
Those are great resources. And Mike, another great way to practice is to just surround yourself with English as much as possible.
Immersion. It's like the magic trick for language learning.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Okay.
You could listen to English music while you're cooking dinner, watch a movie with subtitles, or even follow people on social media who speak English.
Yeah, the important thing is to be around the language as much as you can.
Right. And it's not just about listening and speaking.
What else?
Reading and writing are important too. You encourage our listeners to keep a travel journal, even if it's just a few sentences every day.
That's a good idea.
It can really help them remember what they're learning.
So it's like making your own textbook based on your own experiences.
Exactly. They can even use their journal to practice past tense verbs, descriptive adjectives, and new words they've learned.
I love that idea. And, thinking back on those experiences is a really important part of the process.
Yeah.
It's not just about going to different places.
Right.
It's about what you learn and how you grow as a person.
I couldn't agree more. Every trip, whether it's a short one or a long one, can teach us so much about language and about ourselves.
So true. I remember this one time.
Yeah?
Okay, well, I won't tell another story right now, but I will say one of the biggest things I've learned from traveling is to be open to new things.
Yeah.
To be flexible and to go with the flow.
That's a great lesson, and it goes hand in hand with language learning.
How so?
Sometimes you have to be okay with trying new things, making mistakes, and stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Mistakes are our teachers. I've learned more from my language mess-ups than I have from any book.
Exactly. You know what I find really interesting about those conversations with locals?
What?
They can open up a whole new world of understanding.
Yeah.
It's not just about sharing information, it's about connecting with someone, laughing together, and maybe even learning a new word or phrase that you wouldn't find in a textbook.
Oh, yeah. Those little unexpected language moments are the best souvenirs.
They really are. Do you remember that time in Greece?
Well, let me guess another story about lost luggage. A crazy monkey and a wise old fisherman who only speaks in riddles.
Haha. Almost, but not quite this time.
Okay.
Although knowing you, a mischievous monkey encounter wouldn't be too surprising.
Probably not.
No. This story is about a simple word, Meraki.
Oh, I've heard of that.
I kept hearing it everywhere, in cafe shops, even on the beach.
Yeah.
Finally, I asked a local what it meant. They explained that Meraki is about putting your whole heart and soul into everything you do.
I see.
Doing your work with passion and creativity.
Oh, wow.
And it just hit me how perfectly that word captured the spirit of the Greek people I had met.
Yeah.
It was like a glimpse into their culture, their values, their way of life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It really shows how language is more than just words. It's like a reflection of a culture's soul.
It really is. And those little aha moments are what make learning a language so rewarding.
For sure.
Mike, before we get too excited about all these trips, let's give our listeners some advice on how to actually use their English when they're traveling.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Practicing at home is one thing, but actually using it, out in the real world can feel totally different.
It definitely can. So let's focus on some ways to feel more confident using English when you're traveling.
All right, Sarah, lay it on us. What are your top tips?
Okay, first remember that communication goes both ways.
Yeah.
It's not just about speaking clearly. It's also about listening carefully and trying to understand what the other person is saying.
So active listening is important, even if there's a language barrier.
Absolutely. And one thing that a lot of travelers struggle with is understanding different accents.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
English is spoken all over the world, and those accents can sound really different.
I know I once asked a cab driver in Glasgow to take me to this famous museum, but my American accent confused him.
Oh.
We ended up at a football stadium, miles away.
That's a classic travel story. It shows how important it is to be aware of how pronunciation can change from place to place.
It definitely was a memorable experience. So how can our listeners get used to different accents before they travel?
Listening to different people speaking English is key.
Okay.
Movies, TV shows, podcasts, or even just conversations with people from different places can train your ear to hear those subtle differences.
So it's like a workout for your ears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask people to repeat themselves or speak slower.
Yeah.
Most people are happy to help, especially if you're polite and you show them that you're really trying.
And a smile goes a long way, too.
Definitely a smile can help break down communication barriers.
So it's about being prepared, being flexible, and not being scared to ask for help if you need it.
Exactly. Now let's talk about what to do when things don't go as planned, because you know that happens a lot when you're traveling.
You mean those moments when you miss your train or your plans suddenly change?
Exactly. Travel rarely goes perfectly. That's why it's so important to be able to communicate your needs clearly, even if you're stressed.
Okay, so how can our listeners stay calm when those travel hiccups happen?
First, take a deep breath and figure out what's going on.
Okay.
Then decide what's the most important information you need to tell people, like your hotel reservation or if you have any food allergies.
Right.
This is where those essential English phrases we talked about earlier are really helpful.
Yeah, like, can you help me? Or I need.
Yes. Those phrases become your lifeline when things get tricky.
And it's a good idea to have a little notebook or a phrase book with you.
Right. It's like having a backup language guide in your pocket.
Exactly. And most importantly, remember that it's okay to make mistakes.
Yes, everyone makes mistakes. Don't let that fear stop you from talking.
I love that reminder mistakes are just part of the learning process.
Exactly. Every interaction, every conversation is a chance to learn and grow.
Sarah, you've given our listeners so many great tips for using English confidently while traveling. It's about being prepared, being flexible, and enjoying the process of communicating, even if it's not perfect.
That's a great way to put it, Mike. And remember, language is what connects us to different cultures and different ways of seeing the world.
So true. Go explore, connect, and let your English skills take you on an amazing journey.
That's a perfect way to end things.
We've talked about how to choose a destination, how to plan your trip, how to practice important phrases, how to have meaningful conversations, and what to do when things don't go as planned.
We covered a lot.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into using travel to improve your English.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
If you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more language learning tips and fun.
We'll see you next time.
Safe travels and happy learning. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab, the place to be to unlock the power of English. I'm Mike, your host, and today we've got Sarah with us, our expert guide.
It's fantastic to be here.
Now, have you ever wanted to talk about your favorite animal in English? I mean, like, really express that love.
Yeah, it's a question that comes up a lot, right? What are your favorite animal?
Exactly. So we're going to take a deep dive into how to do that today.
Sounds great.
So for all our listeners out there, let's start easy. What is your favorite animal? Just picture it. Got it. Now, how would you describe it in one sentence?
Yeah, even something like, my favorite animal is a giraffe because they're so tall. That's a great start.
Absolutely. Now, let's say my favorite animal is a pangolin.
Oh, cool.
It's this scaly thing that kind of rolls up in a ball. I don't even know where to start.
Okay, well, instead of just scaly, we can get specific. Like, what kind of scales are they? Big, small? Do they overlap? What color are they?
Oh, right. They're brownish gray. And yeah, they do. They overlap like armor on a little tank.
Precisely. Now you're painting a picture with words.
You know what else helps me describe things? Looking at pictures online.
Oh, that's a good tip. Visualizing things can unlock new vocabulary.
It really does. And speaking of adding details, what about talking about where the animal lives, like its habitat?
Yes. Knowing an animal's habitat helps you understand it better. You know, how it lives, why it looks the way it does.
So instead of just it lives in the ocean, we can say things like it inhabits or it's native to.
Right. You add in context.
And you know what I love? Interesting facts. Like, did you know pangolins are the only mammal completely covered in scales?
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and they're nocturnal, so they're out and about at night. Pretty cool, right?
Very cool. And, you know, sharing those kinds of facts is a great way to keep a conversation going.
It's like your English secret weapon. Now let's get personal. Why do you love this animal? Go beyond. It's cute. What makes it special to you?
That's where emotion words come in. Are you fascinated by its intelligence, inspired by its resilience, amazed by how it's adapted?
Ooh, I like that. It's more than just liking how it looks.
Exactly. It's about connecting with the animal on a deeper level.
So we've got looks, habitat, cool facts, emotions. What about what they do? How do we describe their behavior?
Ah, that's where we bring in action verbs. Instead of a cheetah runs, we can say it sprints or bounds or pounces.
Ooh, I like that. Makes slithering motions like a snake or jumps like a jaguar.
You got it. Using those verbs makes your descriptions more exciting, more dynamic.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but how do we put it all together into one smooth, impressive description?
Okay, well, let's take an example. Let's say your favorite animal is a tiger. Imagine you're telling someone about it. You could start by saying, my favorite animal is the tiger. It's such a majestic creature, and I'm totally captivated by its beauty and power. Tigers are these large, muscular cats with striking orange fur and bold black stripes. No two tigers have the same pattern, like a unique fingerprint.
That's so cool.
They inhabit dense forests and lush grasslands across Asia, perfectly blending into their surroundings. Did you know that tigers are incredible swimmers? Unlike most cats, they love the water and use it to cool down and even hunt prey.
Wow, I'm already hooked. That's a great start.
You can continue by saying, what I find most inspiring about tigers is their strength and independence. They're solitary hunters relying on their cunning and ability to stalk and ambush their prey. When a tiger pounces, it's a display of pure power and precision.
I think it's their fierce spirit and ability to adapt to challenging environments that makes me admire them so much.
I love how you use all those descriptive words: majestic, striking, lush, cutting, fierce. It really brings the tiger to life.
Right. And that surprising fact about tigers being good swimmers keeps things interesting. And then sharing your personal feelings about their strength and independence, that makes the description more engaging.
Absolutely. It's not just about listing facts. It's about showing your passion, your connection with the animal.
Exactly.
Now, I bet our listeners are thinking, okay, that tiger speech is awesome, but how do I apply this to my favorite animal?
Great question. Luckily, the same structure can be used for any animal. Let's break it down.
Okay, I'm ready. First, you clearly introduce your favorite animal and how you feel about it.
So like I could say, my favorite animal is the octopus. I'm fascinated by their intelligence and alien-like appearance.
Perfect. Next, you describe its appearance using vivid adjectives. What's its size, color, unique features?
All right, so for an octopus, I might say they have these bulbous heads and 8 long sinuous arms covered in suckers. Their skin can change color and texture instantly, making them masters of camouflage.
Nice. You're using those descriptive words. Well, now tell us about its habitat. Where does it live? What kind of environment?
Okay, so for the octopus, I could say they're found in oceans all over the world, from shallow coral reefs to the dark depths of the abyss.
Wonderful. Now inject some fun facts. Something surprising most people might not know.
This is my favorite part. Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts and blue blood?
No way.
And they're so smart, they can solve puzzles and even use tools.
Amazing. All right, now for the heart of it. Why do you love this animal? What emotions does it evoke? Give us examples.
For me, it's their intelligence and adaptability that's inspiring. They're like alien geniuses who can solve complex problems and live in such different environments. It makes me wonder what other secrets they're hiding.
Beautiful. You captured those emotions. Now let's add some action. How does your animal move? What are its behaviors?
Okay, for the octopus, I could say they can squeeze their bodies through tiny spaces, propel themselves through water using jet propulsion, and even change their skin texture to mimic rocks and coral.
Fantastic. You're using those action verbs to bring your description to life?
I feel like an octopus expert now.
That's the goal. By practicing these steps, you'll not only learn new words, but also gain a deeper understanding of your favorite animal.
This has been great. But we're running out of time for this deep dive. What's next for our listeners to make these skills stick?
Well, the best way to learn something is to practice it, right? Find a quiet place and just talk out loud about your animal. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just focus on using all those great words and sentences we've been talking about.
It's like a practice run for a real conversation. And hey, if you're feeling brave, record yourself.
Oh, that's a good idea. You can listen back and see how your pronunciation is, or if you're speaking smoothly. And even better, if you have a friend who speaks English, practice with them. Talk about your favorite animal.
Yeah, talking with a friend is more fun and less pressure. And don't forget about writing. Try writing a paragraph about your animal using everything we've learned today.
Writing is a great way to remember new words, and you can work on your sentences at the same time.
Maybe we'll even inspire some future authors, but really the important thing is to have fun with it. The more you practice talking about your favorite animals, the better you'll get at English.
I completely agree. Find what works for you and enjoy the journey.
Well, Sarah, this has been an amazing deep dive into animal vocabulary and descriptions. I feel like my English is better, and I've learned so much about all these incredible creatures.
It's been wonderful being here with you, Mike. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us here at the Learn English Lab. We hope you feel ready to share your love for animals in English.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more awesome English learning tips. We're always creating new content to help you on your language journey.
Happy learning, everyone.
Until next time. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and I'm really excited for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about festivals.
That's awesome.
And joining us to really help us unpack this topic is Sarah. She is an expert in language learning and cultural communication. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm super stoked to be here.
You know, I was thinking before we hit record, I was like, talking about festivals is such a good way to practice your English.
Absolutely.
You get to share your culture. You get to connect with people from all over the world. It's
like a universal language, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So, Sarah, let's dive right into it. I mean, we all know that festivals are about celebrating, but what makes them so important? Like, what's the deeper meaning?
Well, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. Mike, festivals are more than just like parties or celebrations. They're like deeply rooted in history and values and beliefs of a community, and they kind of offer this window into a culture's identity.
Yeah, it's like each festival is like a story that's been passed down for generations. So, Sarah, for our listeners out there who are like eager to learn how to share those stories in English, any tips for them?
Yeah, definitely. So like To make your descriptions really clear and captivating, I always recommend thinking of it as a step-by-step process.
Ooh, I love a good step-by-step process.
Yeah, right.
So what's the first step?
So the first step is just introducing the festival. Just tell your listener the name of it, explain what it's about, and then mention when and where it's celebrated. So for example, you could say, my favorite festival is Diwali, the Festival of Lights. It is celebrated in India and by Indians all over the world, usually in October or November.
Okay, cool. So we've set the stage, we've introduced the star, the festival.
Exactly.
What's next?
Okay, so next you're going to dive into the festival's significance. Explain the meaning, the story behind it. So sticking with Diwali, you could say Diwali symbolizes the triumph of light over darkness and good over evil. It's based on this ancient story about Lord Rama's return to his kingdom after defeating a demon king.
Okay, so we're adding a layer of depth, we're adding the why behind this celebration. This helps the listener understand, what makes it so special.
Right. Now we're going to move on to the preparations.
Okay.
How do people get ready for this festival? What do they do to prepare? Do they clean their homes, decorate shop for new clothes, cook special dishes? This is where you can really paint a picture with your words.
Yeah, it's like we're taking our listeners on a sensory journey.
Exactly.
We're letting them experience the sights, the sounds, even the smells of the preparation.
Right, so think about Diwali. You could describe the colorful Rangoli designs, the bustling markets with people buying sweets and gifts, the aroma of delicious food filling the air.
Yeah, you're making me feel like I'm right there.
Right.
Okay, so we've introduced the festival, we've explained its meaning, we've described the preparations. What's next in our step-by-step guide?
Okay, so now comes the fun part, describing the actual celebrations.
Yeah.
What are the main activities? Bring the festival to life for your listener. Talk about the prayers, the lighting of lamps, the fireworks, the food, the family gatherings. Showcase the heart of the festival.
This is where the story really comes to life. It's like we're dropping our listeners right into the celebration.
Exactly. You want to make them feel like they're experiencing it with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered introductions, meaning preparations and celebrations. What's our next step?
Okay, so this is where you get personal handwork. Share what you personally enjoy most about the festival. What makes it special for you? Maybe it's being with family, cooking special dishes, watching fireworks, or taking part in certain rituals. Adding those personal experiences makes your description unique and relatable.
Yeah, I love that. It's like adding your signature to the story.
Exactly. You could say something like, my favorite part of Diwali is being with my family. We decorate the house together, and I love helping my mother cook special dishes. In the evening, we watch the fireworks and exchange gifts. It's truly magical.
Oh, I can feel the warmth and joy in that description.
Yeah.
It's like you've invited us all to celebrate Diwali with you.
That's the power of storytelling.
It is. Okay, we've covered a lot. Introductions, meaning preparations, celebrations, and personal touches. What's the final step in describing our favorite festival?
The last step is kind of wrapping up your description by explaining why this specific festival is your favorite. What makes it stand out to you?
So we're bringing it all home, tying everything together, and leaving our listeners with a lasting impression of why this festival matters to us.
Exactly. So for instance, you could end your Diwali description by saying, Diwali is my favorite festival because it brings people together and fills the air with happiness, the lights, the food, the unity. It's unforgettable.
Beautiful, Sarah. You've captured the essence of Diwali in just a few sentences. So we've covered the structure, but what about the language? Are there specific words or phrases that our listeners should use?
Absolutely. So using vibrant vocabulary really enhances your descriptions. Words like celebration, tradition, ritual decorations, feast, unity, and prosperity are great choices.
Those are some great suggestions. Now, I think it would be incredibly helpful if we gave our listeners a full example using all these tips and words. What do you say we describe another popular festival like Christmas?
That's a fantastic idea. Christmas is celebrated worldwide, so it'll make a really great example to show how to use these descriptive techniques. So let's start by introducing the festival.
Okay, imagine you're talking to someone who has never experienced Christmas. How would you describe it to them?
I would say something like, my favorite festival is Christmas. It's celebrated on December 25th each year, mainly in Christian countries, but actually people of all backgrounds enjoy it. It commemorates the birth of Jesus Christ, and it's a time for giving love and joy.
Perfect start. You've given them the basics about Christmas and when it's celebrated. How about the preparations?
Okay, so I would describe the weeks before Christmas. For example, I'd say in the weeks leading up to Christmas, people decorate their homes with lights, Christmas trees, and ornaments. They buy gifts for their loved ones and prepare special meals. On Christmas Eve, many families attend church and sing carols.
You're making me feel warm and cozy just thinking about those Christmas preparations.
Right.
Now, how would you describe the main events of Christmas Day?
I'd talk about the excitement of Christmas morning, I'd say. On Christmas Day, families gather to exchange gifts and enjoy a feast. Traditional dishes include roast turkey, mashed potatoes, and Christmas pudding. Many children believe that Santa Claus brings them presents, which adds to the magic.
Oh, I love how you've captured the Christmas spirit. Now, what do you enjoy most about Christmas?
For me, it's the warmth and cozy atmosphere, I'd say. What I love most about Christmas is the warm and cozy atmosphere. The twinkling lights, the smell of freshly baked cookies, and the sound of Christmas music make it magical.
That's such a heartfelt description, Sarah. Lastly, how would you conclude and explain why Christmas is your favorite?
I would conclude by saying Christmas is a festival that brings people together and reminds us to be kind and generous.
The perfect way to summarize the spirit of Christmas. You've done a fantastic job of describing it using vivid language and personal touches. But we've only scratched the surface. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive deeper into the nuances of language and explore how to make those descriptions even more captivating. Stay with us.
And, kind of building on that idea, Mike, think about how we can weave in, these sensory details and this figurative language into like a complete description of a festival. It's like putting together a puzzle where each piece kind of contributes to the overall picture.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we assemble this language puzzle, Sarah?
Okay, well, let's take another popular festival as an example. How about Holi, the Festival of Colors? It's celebrated in India and Nepal, marking the arrival of spring and the victory of good over evil. Imagine you're describing this really vibrant celebration to someone who's never experienced it before.
Okay, I'm picturing my friend who lives in Iceland. They see snow most of the year.
Right.
I bet they'd be fascinated by Holi. So how would we start through it?
Okay, you could begin by setting the scene, right? Saying something like, imagine a world transformed into a living canvas, where like every street and corner just erupts in this riot of color.
Wow, that's a powerful opening line.
Right.
It immediately grabs the listener's attention and sets the stage for something extraordinary.
Exactly. And then you can dive into the specifics using that sensory language to really like paint a picture. You could say, the air is thick with the scent of gulal, the fine-colored powder that paints the faces and clothes of everyone in sight. Laughter echoes through the streets as people chase each other their hands, leaving trails of vibrant hues on everything they touch.
I love how you've incorporated both smell and sound into that description.
Yeah.
It's like, I can already feel the energy and excitement of the festival building.
Right, and to emphasize like that visual spectacle, you could add a simile saying something like, from above, the cries resemble a swirling sea of color, as if a giant artist has splashed his palette across the landscape.
That's a brilliant simile, Sarah. It really captures the scale and the vibrancy of the Holi celebrations.
Right. And don't forget to highlight those unique rituals and traditions that make Holi so special. You could say bonfires crackle and blaze on the eve of Holi, symbolizing the triumph of good over evil. And as the flames die down, people gather around sharing stories and laughter, their faces illuminated by the flickering embers.
You've woven such a captivating narrative, Sarah. It's like, I've been transported to India, and I'm experiencing Holi firsthand.
That's the beauty of language, Mike. When used effectively, it has the power to transcend borders and transport us to different worlds.
Oh, and don't forget, adding a personal touch makes your description even more compelling.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
We talked about that a little bit earlier.
Right.
How can we personalize those descriptions of Holi? Think about what resonates with you most about the festival. Is it that sense of unity and community, the joy of letting go of inhibitions, the spiritual significance of the celebration? Share your own insights and experiences to really connect with your listener on a deeper level.
For example, I could say, what fascinates me most about Holi's is the way it transcends social barriers. On this day, everyone is equally united by the shared experience of joy, laughter, and color.
That's beautiful, Mike. It really adds a layer of depth and meaning to your description. And by sharing your personal perspective, you invite your listener to connect with the festival on a more emotional level.
This has been an incredible journey through the world of festival descriptions, Sarah.
Oh.
You've given our listeners so many valuable tools and techniques to make their English more vivid and engaging.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you, Mike. And remember, the key to mastering any language is practice.
Right.
So I encourage everyone listening to try out these tips and see how they can really elevate their own storytelling.
That's great advice, Sarah. Don't be afraid to experiment. Have fun with language and let your personality shine through.
Exactly. And if you're feeling adventurous, why not share your own festival descriptions with us?
Oh, yeah.
We'd love to hear about the celebrations that bring joy to your life.
That's a wonderful idea. We can all learn from each other and celebrate the incredible diversity of cultures around the world. But for now, it's time to wrap up this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. It's always a pleasure talking about language and culture with you.
And to all our amazing listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into describing your favorite festival in English. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more engaging language learning content. Until next time, keep practicing and keep celebrating. And it's more than just mastering English. Like when you're describing your favorite festival, it's about sharing a piece of your heart.
Yeah.
A piece of your culture with the world.
It is. It's like building bridges, through these shared experiences.
It is, exactly. And who knows, maybe by sharing your favorite festival, you'll inspire someone to learn more about your language, your traditions.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. The ripple effect of that is amazing.
So true. Well, Sarah, this has been such an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise on describing festivals in English.
It's been my pleasure, Mike. I always enjoy talking about language and culture, and I hope our listeners feel empowered to go out there and share their own stories.
I'm sure they do. To all of our amazing listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to the Learn English Lab. We hope you found this deep dive into describing your favorite festival helpful and inspiring.
Remember, practice makes perfect, so don't be afraid to try out what you've learned today. Tell a friend, a family member, or even a stranger about your favorite festival.
Yeah. And if you're feeling really brave, share your description in the comments below.
Yes.
We'd love to hear from you.
We're always here to support you on your English language learning journey.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep celebrating.
Yes.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more exciting language adventures.
Happy learning, everyone.
Bye for now. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and we are diving deep today into how to describe your day in English. It's something we all do, but how can we really get good at it?
That's right. Whether you're just starting out or you've been learning for a while, there's always room to improve when it comes to talking about your day.
For sure. And to help us do just that, we have the awesome Sarah here with us today. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so let's jump right in, Sarah. When we talk about describing our day, is there even such a thing as a typical day? I mean, everyone's life is so different.
Yeah, you're right. Everyone's day is totally unique, but I think we can think about common activities that a lot of people do at different times of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, and night.
Okay, so it's kind of like a starting point, and then everyone can add their own personal spin.
Yeah, exactly. A framework to build on.
Got it. So how do we go from that basic framework to actually describing our own day in a way that's interesting and engaging? For example, like, how do I not sound boring when I talk about my day?
Well, I always tell my students to start simple. Don't feel like you have to use super complex grammar or fancy vocabulary right away.
Like, I wake up, I eat, I work. Something like that?
Yeah, precisely. Something like that. It's simple, but it's a good foundation.
Okay, I can work with that. So then how do we make it more interesting?
Just add some details, So instead of just saying, I wake up, you could say, I wake up at 7 a.m.
Oh, okay. I see a small change, but it tells us so much more.
Exactly. And you can keep adding layers, like what you eat for breakfast, where you work, or what's it like getting to work. All those little things that make your day your own.
This is already way better than my usual. I wake up, I work, I go back to sleep routine. But how can we make those descriptions even more interesting? Something that will really make someone want to keep listening.
Well, Mike, one thing that can really help is using phrases that connect the different parts of your day and make everything flow better. Like words such as usually, sometimes, before, and after. These give your description more detail and turn it into more of a story.
Oh, I get it. So instead of I have breakfast, I go to work, it's more natural to say after breakfast, I usually go to work.
Exactly. Using those connecting phrases paints a clearer picture and makes your description way more engaging. It's your story, so make it come alive.
Man, I'm feeling inspired, Sarah. What if we tried putting all of this together? Could you give us an example of how someone might describe their whole day using these tips?
Sure. Let me paint you a picture. My alarm goes off at 6:30, but to be honest, I usually hit the snooze button a few times. I'm not really a morning person, so around 7, I finally get out of bed and go straight to the coffee machine. After a quick breakfast of yogurt and granola, I get ready for work. My commute is only like 20 minutes, and I usually listen to podcasts on the train. Work starts at 9, and the mornings are always super busy with meetings and emails.
Wow, that's great. It feels like I'm right there with you starting the day. It's so much more interesting than just listing things off.
Right, and we're just getting started. We can keep building on this as we go through the whole day, adding details and using those connecting phrases to tell a really interesting story.
I am already thinking about how to make my own day descriptions better.
This is great stuff! This is great stuff. But Sarah, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to actually do it. Any advice on how to make these tips really stick and get better at talking about my day?
You got it. Practice makes perfect, Mike. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Try writing about your day in a journal or talk to yourself out loud. You could even set a timer and see how much you can describe in like a minute or two. The more you do it, the easier it will become. I love the timer idea. A little bit of pressure can really help. Okay, so we've talked about describing our own day, but what about when we're listening to someone else talk about theirs? How can we keep the conversation going and show them that we're really listening?
That's when you want to be an active listener. Don't just sit there quietly. Ask questions. Instead of just nodding along, you could ask things like, what time do you normally wake up? Or what do you like to do in the evenings? Those questions can lead to some pretty interesting conversations.
I see what you mean. It's like you're really interested in what they have to say. Not just hearing about their day, but really getting to know them.
Exactly. It turns a simple chat into something more meaningful. And you'd be surprised at what you can learn just by asking about someone's day.
That's so true. People love to talk about themselves. So asking about their day is a great way to get to know them better. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to describe our day and make it sound good. But are there any specific words or phrases that we should or shouldn't use?
That's a good point, Mike. One thing to think about is how formal or informal you want to be. If you're talking to a friend, you can be super casual. But if you're at like a job interview or giving a presentation, you might want to use more formal language.
Got it. So it's all about knowing who you're talking to in this situation.
Exactly. Let's say you want to talk about how tired you were when you woke up. If you're talking to your friend, you might say something like, man, I was so wiped out this morning. But in a more formal situation, you might say, I was feeling rather fatigued this morning.
So like instead of saying, I rolled into work at 9, you'd say, I commenced my workday at 9 a.m.
Right. You adjust your language to fit the situation.
This has been so helpful, Sarah. I feel like I'm already thinking about my day in a whole new way. Not just how I talk about my day, but also how I can have better conversations with other people about their day.
That's awesome to hear, Mike. I love finding ways to make language learning practical and relatable.
Speaking of relatable, I've had some pretty funny experiences trying to describe my day in English.
Well, tell me about it. I love a good story.
Okay, so imagine this. I'm at a cafe trying to order breakfast, and I want to tell the barista that I woke up late and ran out of the house without eating anything. But instead of saying I skipped breakfast, I accidentally said I jumped over breakfast.
Oh no, I bet they were confused.
Oh, they were totally confused. But we figured it out eventually and had a good laugh about it. It's moments like those that remind me that making mistakes is all part of learning.
Absolutely. Embracing those mistakes and finding the humor in them can make the whole process a lot more fun. And honestly, those funny stories often become the most memorable learning moments.
So true. It's all about having fun with it. Well, everyone, we've talked about a lot today. From the basics of describing our day to making it sound interesting, and even how to use different levels of formality. Sarah, is there anything else we should keep in mind before we wrap up?
I think we covered all the important stuff. We talked about the framework, the vocabulary, and even some cultural things, but I want to stress one last thing. Don't be afraid to play around with language and find your own style. Describing your day is a personal thing, so have fun with it and let your personality come through.
I love that. It's not about sounding like a textbook. It's about being yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes learning a language so cool. You discover your own way of expressing yourself and connect with people in a deeper way.
Exactly. It's about sharing those experiences and connecting with each other.
Well said, Sarah. I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up. Finding your voice, connecting with others, and just having fun while you learn.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, practice makes progress. The more you use these tips, the more comfortable and fluent you'll become.
Absolutely. So to sum it up, if you want to describe your day in English with confidence, start with a simple structure, add some interesting details, and don't forget those connecting phrases. And like Sarah said, try new things, have fun, and find your own voice.
And one last tip, don't be scared of making mistakes. We all do it. It's all part of the journey.
So true. Mistakes are just chances to learn and get better. Well, everyone, that's a wrap for our deep dive into describing your day in English. We hope you found it useful and easy to understand. Sarah,
Yeah.
thanks again for being here today and sharing your knowledge.
It was my pleasure, Mike. Always happy to talk about language and learning.
And to all our awesome listeners out there, thank you for joining us on the Learn English Lab. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more helpful lessons like this. Until next time, keep practicing and keep learning.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's about those shared experiences, and using language to connect with people.
Definitely.
Well said, Sarah. I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. Finding your voice and connecting with others and, just enjoying the whole journey of learning.
Exactly. And remember, the more you practice, the better you'll get.
That's right. So just to recap, everyone, if you want to be able to describe your day in English, start with a simple structure like we talked about, add those details to make it interesting, and don't forget those connecting phrases. And Sarah said, try new things, have fun, and find your own way of expressing yourself.
Oh, and one more thing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It happens to everyone. It's part of learning. It really is. Mistakes are just chances to learn and grow. So we've come to the end of our deep dive into describing your day in English. I hope you found this helpful and maybe even learned a few new things. Sarah, thanks again for joining us today and sharing all your great tips.
Happy to be here, Mike. I always enjoy talking about language and learning.
And to all of our amazing listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to the Learn English Lab. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more helpful lessons like this. Until next time, keep practicing and keep learning. Welcome back to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're diving deep into something really practical, something that can actually be, well, kind of exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how to talk about your aims in life in English and how to do it smoothly and confidently.
I like that. And hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm thrilled to be here, Mike. I'm all about giving you the words, the tools, the linguistic tools to make your goals and dreams totally clear.
I think it's interesting.
This is a skill that can open so many doors,
Yeah.
both personally and professionally.
A lot of times when we learn English, we focus on like the day-to-day, ordering food, asking for directions.
Right.
But being able to articulate, what you want out of life,
I like that.
that's next level communication.
I love that.
That's where you really start sharing your dreams and passion.
Absolutely.
And honestly, even if your English isn't perfect yet, that's okay.
I agree.
That genuine energy,
Yes.
it'll carry you through.
100%. Sometimes we get so caught up in being grammatically perfect,
Right.
when really it's the feeling behind the words that people connect with. So before we get to the actual words themselves,
Yep.
let's take a minute to think about what we really mean by this word, aim. What are we talking about?
I think that's important because it seems so obvious, but I think even native English speakers
Right.
can sometimes fumble this. What questions should our listener ask themselves
Right.
to really pinpoint that driving force in their life?
It's about going deep, asking yourself what really gets you excited. What gets you up in the morning?
Yeah.
What gives you that feeling of purpose?
Right.
And maybe even more importantly, what kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
I like that. It's almost like figuring out your internal compass. What's your guiding star? For some people, their aim might be something very concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to become a doctor. I want to start my own business. I want to travel the world.
Right.
Those are very clear aims.
Exactly.
But for others, it might be more of a feeling or a way of life they want to cultivate.
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer. That's what's so cool about it. It's completely individual. It's whatever truly resonates with you, what makes your heart sing,
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a handle on what our aim actually is.
Okay.
Now we need the vocabulary to match it. We need the English vocabulary. It's like upgrading our toolkit, right?
Yes. Expanding your vocabulary gives you more tools to express yourself,
Right.
more accurately, more nuance. And when you're talking about something as important as your aim in life, there are certain words that can really make an impact.
Okay, so what are some of those power words, some of those key words that we can use to really elevate these conversations?
Words like aspiration, goal, passion, purpose, ambition.
Right.
Each of these has a slightly different shade of meaning, and using them well can make your communication much more sophisticated.
I see. So it's not just about using big words to sound smart.
Right.
It's about choosing the right words.
Exactly.
To really reflect your own feelings.
Yes.
To really express yourself authentically.
Exactly. It's about finding the words that fit you.
Okay, can you give us some examples of how these words might actually play out in a real conversation?
Sure. Let's say somebody asks you about your plans for the future.
Okay.
You could say, my aspiration is to become a musician and create music that moves people. Or you could say, I have a deep passion for environmental conservation, and my ultimate goal is to work in renewable energy.
Okay.
Do you see how those different words kind of bring a different flavor to your message?
Yeah, I do. I see what you're saying. But even with the best vocabulary, we still need to structure our words effectively.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like a good story talking about your aim, it needs a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Absolutely. A clear structure keeps the listener engaged and helps your message come across clearly.
So how do we actually structure this conversation about our aims? What are the essential pieces?
I like to think about it like building a house.
Okay.
You need a solid foundation, strong walls, and a roof to tie it all together.
I like that analogy. So how do we build that house? What are the pieces?
I recommend a 4-part structure: introduction, reason, steps, and conclusion.
Okay. Introduction, reason, steps, conclusion. Let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
What goes in each of those sections?
So in the introduction, you want to state your aim directly. Nice and concisely. Think of it like a headline that grabs your listener's attention.
Right.
Then the reason is where you get to explain the why behind your aim.
Okay.
Like what motivates you? What changes are you hoping to see? This is where you make that emotional connection.
Right. It's not just what you want, it's why you want it.
Exactly. And then the steps section, that's where you get practical.
Okay.
What are you actually doing to reach your goal? Are you studying, volunteering, networking, saving money?
Yeah.
Sharing those steps shows that you're serious and dedicated to your aim.
Right. So you're not just dreaming, you're actually building towards it.
Exactly. And finally, the conclusion is where you wrap it all up. Reiterate your aim, then emphasize your determination. You know, you can express your excitement about the journey, the impact you want to make. It's your final chance to leave a lasting impression.
Okay, I love this structure.
Good.
But can you give us an example? Can you show us what it might look like in action?
Absolutely. Let's imagine someone whose aim is to be a chef.
Okay.
And open their own restaurant one day.
Okay.
Their introduction could be as simple as, my aim is to become a chef and have my own restaurant.
Okay, very clear, very straightforward. What about the reason? Why is that so important to them?
They could say something like, I love bringing people together through food, you know, and creating a space where everyone feels welcome, where they can experience new flavors.
So it's about their passion for food, about creating a sense of community.
Exactly.
And how would they highlight the steps they're taking to make this happen?
They might share, I'm currently taking culinary classes and I'm working part-time at a local bakery to get experience.
So they're building their skills step by step.
Exactly.
And finally, to bring it all home, what might a strong conclusion look like?
They could say, I'm excited to keep learning and growing so I can eventually open a restaurant that brings joy to my community.
Okay, I love that. I love how they connected it back to their community.
Right.
And you can really feel their determination there. That's such a clear example.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
It is. But starting from scratch like that, it can be intimidating.
Yeah.
Are there any phrases like sentence starters that can kind of give us a jump start?
Yes.
When we're talking about our aims, you know, kind of like having a cheat sheet.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes having those go-to phrases can make all the difference.
Yeah.
And the great thing about these phrases is they're flexible. You can use them as a starting point.
Right.
And build from there with your own experiences.
Okay, let's hear it. What are some of these magic phrases?
Some simple but effective ones are, my goal is to, I'm passionate about, I aspire to, I'm working towards, I dream of.
I like those. They're simple, but you're right. You can build on those so easily.
Wait, you can make them your own.
How would they actually fit into, you know, a natural conversation?
Okay. Let's say someone asks you, what are you hoping to achieve in the next few years?
Okay.
You could respond with, my goal is to become fluent in English and travel the world using my language skills to connect with people from different cultures.
That's great.
Or if someone asks about your hobbies, you might say, I'm passionate about photography and I aspire to have my work featured in a gallery someday.
I love how easy it is to just plug in the specifics.
Right.
To really personalize these phrases, make them your own.
Yeah, the key is to practice using them in different situations so they become second nature. The more you use them, the more comfortable and natural you'll sound.
So it's not about memorizing a script, it's about internalizing these phrases. You know, making them a part of your natural way of speaking.
Exactly.
It's about owning your message and expressing it with confidence. But, you know, I know that for a lot of people, especially those learning English, even with the best phrases and structure, speaking can still be a little bit intimidating.
Oh, of course.
What are some tips for practicing and building that confidence?
It can be. And it's interesting because I think sometimes we focus so much on the words that we forget about everything else.
Yeah.
That goes into communication.
Exactly.
So much of how we communicate actually goes beyond the words themselves.
Right. And I think about things like, body language, tone of voice.
Yes.
These subtle cues.
Totally.
They can really make a difference.
100%.
How can we use those nonverbal elements to really enhance what we're saying when we're talking about our aims?
I think it all starts with awareness, like being aware of our posture. Standing or sitting up straight conveys confidence and self-assurance.
Right.
If you think about it, like if someone is hunched over and kind of mumbling about their dreams, it's hard to take them seriously.
You're right. It's like your body's reflecting how you feel on the inside.
Exactly.
If you're not confident, it's going to show.
Totally. And then there's eye contact.
Eye contact.
This is so important for building rapport.
Right.
And really connecting with your listener. It shows that you're engaged.
Yeah.
And that you genuinely care about what you're sharing.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to look the listener in the eye. It really shows your sincerity.
I know some people are a little uncomfortable with eye contact.
I know, me too, sometimes.
Especially when you're nervous.
Right.
Do you have any tips for making it feel a little bit more natural?
Oh, for sure. So one thing you can try is to focus on one eye at a time, or even the space between the eyebrows.
Yeah.
If direct eye contact feels too intense, the important thing is that it feels genuine.
Right.
Not
you don't want to be staring people down.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so posture, eye contact.
Okay.
What about hand gestures?
Oh, I love hand gestures. I think they can be so expressive.
Right.
And I think when you're truly passionate about something, your hands naturally want to get involved.
They do.
So don't be afraid to let them move, Let those hands flow with your words.
Okay, it's almost like they're painting a picture.
Totally.
Alongside your words. But are there any hand gestures we should avoid?
That's a great question because I think, there are definitely some gestures that are fine in some cultures. But not so fine in others.
Oh, yeah.
So it's always good to be aware of those cultural differences.
Okay.
A good general rule, I think, is to keep your gestures open and natural. Avoid anything like too sudden or too pointed.
Right.
Things that could be misunderstood.
Right. It's all about being respectful and mindful.
Absolutely. So, it's about finding that balance between expressing yourself and being sensitive to those cultural differences.
I love that. I love how all of these things we've been talking about, they all come together to really enhance the way we communicate.
Yeah, it's about creating that connection. And remember, you are the expert
Yes.
on your own aims.
Yeah.
Your passion will shine through.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with a clear, confident way of communicating, it can be so inspiring.
And, I think as we've been talking about all these strategies for expressing our aims in English, it strikes me that these skills are applicable to so many other areas of life.
Totally. It goes way beyond language.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to convince your friends to go on a trip with you.
Right.
Or you're pitching an idea at work. Or even just sharing your dreams with someone you love.
I love that.
These communication skills can really open doors.
They can. They
can create opportunities.
And you know what else is really cool about it?
What?
The skills are transferable. So the more you practice expressing yourself in English, the more confident and articulate you become in other areas of your life too.
Oh, it's
like a ripple effect.
I like that.
Boosting your overall communication skills.
It's like an investment that keeps paying off.
It is. It is. And you know what else?
What's that?
Language learning is a lifelong process.
It is.
It really is.
I mean, I still feel like I'm learning English.
Oh, me too. All the time.
Every day.
Yeah. That's what keeps it fun and interesting.
Exactly.
There's always something new to learn.
Yeah.
Always room to improve.
I love that. Okay, so we're not alone.
No, you're definitely not alone.
We're all this journey together.
Yes, we are.
We're all learning and growing.
And that's what makes it so much fun.
And I think it's great to have a community.
Oh, absolutely.
People to support you.
Yeah, to cheer you on.
To share your experiences with you.
Yes, and to learn from.
Yeah. I love that. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about finding those power words. We've talked about, mastering our nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from our listeners.
Me too.
What are some of your biggest takeaways?
Yeah.
What resonated with you the most?
I'd love to know what you guys are struggling with.
Yeah.
What tips and strategies have worked for you.
Yeah. Let's have a conversation.
Yes, let's chat. Let's make this interactive.
Let's make this collaborative.
I love that.
Yeah. Share your insights. Ask your questions.
Yeah.
Let's learn from each other.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
We are.
And, it's so easy to get caught up in thinking about, like, what we haven't achieved yet.
Right.
But it's so important to remember to acknowledge
Yeah.
how far we've come.
Absolutely.
And to celebrate those wins, big and small.
Yes.
It's all about progress, not perfection.
Right.
Language learning is a journey. It's not a destination.
You got it.
So enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Embrace the bumps in the road.
Yeah. Those bumps are where you learn.
Exactly. And most importantly, have fun.
Absolutely. And, what I find so inspiring is the incredible diversity of our listeners.
I know. It's amazing.
We have people from all over the world.
Yeah.
From all walks of life.
It's so cool.
And it's really a testament to the power of language.
Yes.
To connect us across cultures.
It really is.
It's beautiful.
It is.
No matter where you're from, no matter your background, language can be that bridge.
That bridge.
It's beautiful.
No
matter where you're from,
no
matter your background, language can be that bridge.
That bridge.
That lets us share our stories, our dreams, our aspirations.
Absolutely.
It's really powerful.
It is.
And it's a reminder that we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves.
100%.
And that feeling of connection can be really empowering.
Especially when we're working towards goals.
Right.
But it might feel challenging sometimes, knowing you're not alone.
Yeah.
Knowing there are other people out there who understand your struggles,
Mm-hmm.
who share your passion.
Yeah.
That can make all the difference.
It really can.
It can.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into talking about your aims in life in English,
okay.
I think it's important to just take a moment to appreciate this amazing community of language learners that we're all a part of.
I love that. To everyone listening, thank you for being here.
For sharing this journey with us.
You are all so inspiring.
Your dedication, your enthusiasm. It's amazing.
Incredible.
And we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely. So don't hesitate to reach out, ask questions, share your experiences, connect with other learners in the comments.
Yeah, let's keep this conversation going.
Yes. Let's create a space where everyone feels empowered to express their aims and aspirations with confidence.
I love that. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to you.
Oh, thank you.
Our amazing expert.
It's been a pleasure.
For sharing your wisdom and your passion with us.
It has been a pleasure, Mike. It's always inspiring to connect with fellow language enthusiasts.
Absolutely.
And to share the magic of communication.
And to all of our wonderful listeners out there.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us here at the Learn English Lab.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
We hope you feel equipped to speak about your aims in life with confidence and clarity.
Absolutely. And don't forget to share and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes. We'd love to have you as part of our community.
For more tips and tricks on your English learning journey.
And until next time.
Happy learning.
Happy learning. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike. And I'm really excited to be joined by Sarah, our expert for this deep dive into describing a day in your village.
It's great to be here, Mike. I'm excited to explore the world of village life through words.
Sarah, it's not just about listing off what you do, but really about transporting your listener to your village. We want them to feel like they're right there with you, experiencing the sights and sounds and even the smells.
Yeah, definitely. It's about creating this captivating story that goes beyond just saying what happened. Think of yourself as like a storyteller, sharing a piece of your world with people who maybe have never even experienced village life.
So how do we even start? Where do we begin? How do we set the scene for this experience?
Well, just like any good story, it all starts with a really strong introduction. You want to grab your listener's attention right away and give them a sense of place.
Okay, so instead of just saying, I live in a village, give it some personality.
Right.
Like, I live in a charming village nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling river.
Exactly. You've already given your village a name. You've hinted at its beauty. You've added some captivating imagery. And to make it even more personal, maybe mention a unique feature or your connection to it. Something like, my family has lived here for generations, and their stories echo through the cobblestone streets.
Yeah, you're giving them a sneak peek into your world, setting the stage. It reminds me of when I visited a village in India. The moment I stepped off the bus, I was just hit with this wave of the scent of spices and the vibrant colors of the market. It was sensory overload.
That's a fantastic example, Mike. Those sensory details, they're so important for bringing your story to life. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can use simple phrases to guide your listener through your morning routine, I usually wake up early to the sound of roosters crowing, or after freshening up, I help my mother milk the cows.
Yeah, you're painting a picture with words. So instead of just saying, I eat breakfast, you could say, I savor a breakfast of warm, freshly baked bread and sweet, milky tea as the sun rises.
Exactly. You're not just telling them what you do, you're showing them. And those little details, they make all the difference.
So we've woken up, taken in the sights and sounds, and had our breakfast. Now it's time to get into the heart of the day.
Yeah, think about those activities that fill your day in the village. It might be helping your family with chores, working in the fields, or maybe attending school.
And we can use those simple phrases again to describe these actions, like, I help my father tend to the rice paddies, or after school I gather firewood with my siblings.
Absolutely. And remember, you can structure the section in a way that feels natural to you. You can follow the flow of your day or group activities by theme. Perhaps you focus on all the farming tasks or the interactions you have within the village.
That makes sense. It gives you that flexibility and personality and makes sure your story reflects your village. But it's not just about what you do, right? It's also about capturing that essence of the village.
You're absolutely right, Mike. We've talked about the acronyms, but what about the atmosphere, the scenery, the soul of your village?
So we're talking about painting a vivid picture of the landscape, the architecture, the ambiance.
Exactly. Think about what stands out visually. Is your village surrounded by lush green fields? Are there colorful houses with beautiful carvings? Is there a bustling market square where villagers gather to trade and tell stories?
So we're using those sensory details again, but this time for the village. So instead of just saying the village is beautiful, we could say the village is a tapestry of vibrant colors with small mud houses adorned with carvings and fragrant flowers blooming in every corner.
Now you're talking. You're not just describing the village, you're making the listener feel something. Don't forget about the lifestyle. What makes life in your village different from the city?
The sense of community, the slower pace of life, the way everyone knows each other and stops to chat.
Excellent points, Mike. Those are the details that will really immerse your listener in your world. Think about those unique things that make your village special and find a way to bring them into your story.
We've moved from a general intro to a more vivid picture of village life. But the day isn't over yet. What about the evening, that transition from all the busyness of the day to the calm of the evening?
You're exactly right. The evening brings a different feeling, a sense of peace and reflection as the day ends.
I remember from my trip to India, as the sun began to set, the village just transformed family. Families gathered on their porches, children played in the fading light. The air was filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. It was magical.
What a beautiful image. And you can capture that same magic by focusing on those peaceful activities that mark the end of your day.
So instead of just saying, I eat dinner, we could say, we gather around a fire, sharing stories and laughter as we enjoy a meal made with fresh ingredients from our garden.
That's it. You're not just describing the action, you're creating that feeling of togetherness. And remember, those simple phrases can go a long way. In the evening, I help my grandmother prepare dinner while she tells me stories of her childhood. Or we often have village gatherings where people sing and dance under the stars.
It's like bringing the day full circle. We started with those sounds of the village waking up, and now we're ending with these quiet moments. But there's one more important thing we haven't talked about yet.
You're right, Mike. We've talked about the activities, the scenery, the routines, but what about your feelings, your reflections on village life?
Now we go beyond just describing what we do and really talk about what it means to us.
Yeah, it's about bringing your own personality into it, connecting with the listener. Don't be afraid to express what village life means to you, what you've learned from it, why it's so special to you.
Yeah, be open and honest and let your listeners really see how much your village means to you. It's like the difference between reading a travel brochure and hearing a friend tell you about their trip.
Exactly. Think about those parts of your day that make you feel something. Maybe it's the peacefulness of walking through the fields in the morning, or the joy of sharing a meal with your family at night.
Maybe it's the contentment of listening to your grandparents' stories and knowing their wisdom has been passed down.
Yeah, those are the things that will resonate with your listeners and build a stronger connection. You can express those feelings with simple phrases like, I feel so grateful for my family and my village, or living here has taught me what community really means.
Those real emotions make the story come alive. And you know, Sarah, it's not just about the words themselves, it's also how we say them.
You're right, Mike. Our tone of voice, our energy, it all adds to the story.
I remember when I visited that village in India, I was nervous about my English. But everyone was so nice and patient. They just wanted to talk to me, not judge my grammar.
That's wonderful, Mike. And it shows how important confidence is. Don't let being afraid of making mistakes stop you from talking. Embrace those mistakes. They're how you learn.
And remember, the more you practice, the more confident you'll get. Talk to friends, family, even practice in the mirror.
Practice makes perfect, right? But being yourself is even more important than being perfect. Let your personality come through. Don't be afraid to use humor or tell stories that make your narrative more interesting.
Like the time I tried to milk a cow and got sprayed in the face. Always a funny story. But really, those personal moments make your story more relatable and keep the listener interested.
Exactly. It's about finding the right mix between using clear descriptions and sharing your own unique perspective.
So we've talked about setting the scene, the main activities, the uniqueness of village life, and bringing in our personal thoughts and feelings. What else do we need to remember as we put our stories together?
Well, remember that storytelling is something you get better at over time. Like playing an instrument or playing a sport, you can't expect to be amazing right away.
Definitely not. It takes time and patience and being willing to learn from your mistakes, but it's so worth it.
It really is. There's nothing like the feeling of connecting with someone through a good story. And when you tell a story about your village, you're not just sharing facts, you're sharing your culture, your history, a part of you.
And when we do that, we break down walls and understand each other better. We remember that even though we're different, we're all human.
I love that. And speaking of sharing and connecting, I'm reminded of a quote by Maya Angelou. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you.
So true. And that's for all of us, no matter where we're from or what language we speak. We all have stories, and those stories need to be heard.
Exactly. Language gives us the ability to share those stories with the world.
So for everyone out there who have a story, don't be shy. Embrace the challenge, practice your English, and let your voice be heard. The world is listening.
I completely agree. And remember, there are so many things out there to help you, online courses, language partners. You have so many chances to improve your storytelling.
We've talked about so much today, from setting the scene to sharing our feelings, Sarah, before we wrap up. Do you have any last bits of advice for our listeners as they start their village storytelling adventures?
I do, and it goes back to what we've been saying all along. Don't be afraid to try things out, to play with language, to find your own way of expressing yourself. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
It's about finding your own voice, right? Embracing the things that make your story unique.
Exactly. As you practice and experiment, notice the moments that feel really strong or moving. What words or phrases create the best pictures? What stories get the biggest reactions?
It's like tuning an instrument, finding the perfect sound to capture your audience. And it's not just about capturing other people, it's also about helping us understand our villages and ourselves better.
You're right, Mike. When we think about our experiences and put them into words, we understand the little things about village life and how they've made us who we are.
Like looking at our memories with a magnifying glass and finding new things we never noticed before. And when we share those things, we help others see the world the way we see it, connect with us more deeply.
Perfectly said, Mike. And I think that's what storytelling is all about, creating connections, understanding each other, and remembering that we're all connected.
It's been amazing talking about how to describe a day in our villages. We talked about sensory details, personal reflections, and the power of telling our stories. But before we go, I want to thank you, Sarah, for sharing your knowledge with us today.
It's been great, Mike. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. I hope you feel inspired to share your own village stories.
And remember, no matter how experienced you are, your voice is important. So take on the challenge, practice hard, and never stop exploring the magic of language.
I couldn't agree more. The world needs to hear your stories.
And if you like this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great insights into language and culture. See you next time. Happy storytelling.
I do, and it goes back to what we've been saying. Don't be afraid to try things out. Play with language, find your own way of expressing yourself. You know, what works for one person might not work for another, and that's totally fine.
It's all about finding your voice, right? Like what makes your story special.
Exactly. And as you practice and experiment, pay attention to the things that feel really strong or interesting, like what words or phrases paint the best picture, what stories get the best reactions.
It's like you said before, fine-tuning an instrument, finding that perfect sound to really connect with your audience. And, you know, it's not just about other people, it's also about helping us understand our villages and even ourselves better.
That's a great point, Mike. When we think about our experiences and put them into words, we start to see those little details about village life and how they've shaped who we are.
It's like we're looking back at our memories with a fresh perspective, finding new things we never saw before. And when we share those things, we help others see the world through our eyes, connect with us on a different level.
I like that, Mike. I think that's the most important thing about storytelling, creating connections, understanding each other, and remembering that we're all connected in some way.
It's been so great exploring how to describe a day in our villages. We've covered sensory details, personal reflections, and the power of sharing our stories. But before we wrap things up, I want to thank you, Sarah, for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Mike. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. We hope you feel inspired to share your own village stories with everyone.
Yeah, and remember, no matter how much experience you have, your voice matters. So embrace the challenge, practice with passion, and never stop exploring the power of language.
Absolutely. The world needs to hear your stories.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting looks into language and culture. Until next time, happy storytelling. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and boy, am I excited you're joining us for this deep dive into something I think we all love, and that's, funny stories.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Sarah, and I'm here to help you share those hilarious moments, but in English.
Yeah, we all have those stories that make us laugh, every time we think about them. those personal blunders, those surprising moments, those things that just cracked everyone up. And today we're going to explore how to tell those stories, especially if you're learning English.
Absolutely. It's more than just, practicing English. Sharing stories helps you connect with people, build confidence in speaking, and it's just plain fun.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We've got to pick the right story, and I'm already feeling a little stuck.
Well, think about it this way. Which story brings a smile to your face just thinking about it, Which one do you find yourself wanting to tell over and over again?
Okay, I'm starting to see what you mean. It's not just about what happened, but how you felt, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's that emotional memory that makes a story really come alive.
Okay, so let's say I have a few funny moments in mind. How do I pick the one? I mean, I've tripped up the stairs. I've accidentally called my teacher mom. I even once walked into a glass door.
Those all sound promising. But which one makes you laugh the most? Which one has the most potential for humor?
Okay, I think I've got it. Remember that time I completely messed up a presentation at work? Oh, man. It was a disaster. But looking back, it's kind of hilarious.
Now you're talking. A presentation gone wrong, that's comedy gold. So let's start building this story. How would you describe the humor? Was it awkward slapstick?
It was definitely awkward, like foot and mouth awkward. I was so nervous and I just blurted out the wrong thing at the wrong time.
I can already picture it. So we've got awkward humor. Now let's add some descriptive words. Was it cringeworthy, hilarious, mortifying?
All of the above, but definitely mortifying at the time. And speaking of words, what about those action verbs? Like, did I stumble through my notes or freeze on the spot?
Those are great. Those strong verbs are like adding sound effects to your story. And don't forget about idioms and phrases. They can add so much flavor and really capture the humor.
Oh yeah, like I wanted the earth to swallow me whole, or I could feel my face turning beet red, but I'm always a bit nervous about using idioms. I don't want to sound unnatural.
I hear ya. But with a little practice, you can use them confidently. Think of them as adding spice to your story. For instance, instead of saying, I was embarrassed, you could say, I wanted to crawl under my desk and disappear.
Okay, I see how that works. It paints a funnier picture. So we've got the story, the vivid memory, and we're building up those awesome descriptive words. What's next?
Now let's think about the structure of your story. It needs a clear beginning, middle, and end. Think of it like a mini movie with a captivating plot.
You mean like an intro, build-up, climax, and resolution?
Yes. Let's use your presentation story as an example. Your introduction sets the scene. You're nervous. It's a big presentation. Your boss is there. What else is happening?
Oh, and the projector isn't working. Classic presentation nightmare fuel.
Perfect. The tension is rising. Then comes the climax. You fumble with the slides, things go wrong, and you blurt out something completely off topic.
Okay, I'm seeing it now. The room goes silent. Everyone is staring.
Exactly. And then what happens? Does someone laugh? Does your boss say something?
Oh man, my boss just stared at me with this blank expression. It was the most awkward silence ever.
That is brilliant. So we have the build up, the awkward blunder, and now we need the resolution. How did you get out of that situation?
Well, I stammered through an apology and somehow managed to get the projector working. The rest of the presentation was a blur.
And was everyone still cringing, or did people eventually relax?
Surprisingly, a few people started chuckling. I think they realized I was mortified and they kind of felt bad for me.
There you go. So you've got the awkward beginning, the disastrous climax, and then that resolution where the tension eases. But how do you make sure the story flows smoothly, especially in another language?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. It's one thing to have the story in my head, but it's another to actually tell it in a way that makes sense.
Well, that's what transition words can come in handy. They're like bridges that connect the different parts of your story. Words like then, suddenly, because, but they help the listener follow all.
Okay, give me an example of how that works in my presentation story.
Sure, you could say, I was so nervous, but I tried to stay calm. Then the projector died. I panicked because I didn't know what to do. See how those little words make the story flow more smoothly?
Yeah, it's like adding signposts to guide the listener along. So we've got the structure, the transitions. What about the delivery? I mean, some people are naturally funny, but what about those of us who are a little less expressive?
That's a great point. And it brings us to the next step, practice.
Okay, so we've got our story, our vocabulary, our structure, our transitions. Now it's time to actually tell the story.
Yeah, exactly. And don't worry, you don't have to be a stand-up comedian to tell a funny story. It's more about sharing your experience with energy and enthusiasm.
So how do we practice that? Do we just stand in front of the mirror and tell ourselves the story?
That's one way to do it. It can help you get comfortable with the words and the flow. But you can also try telling the story to a friend, family member, or even a pet. The key is to practice speaking out loud.
I see your point. But talking to myself in the mirror might make me feel more awkward. And what about those nonverbal cues? Like, how much should I use my hands? What kind of facial expressions work? It can feel overwhelming.
You're absolutely right. Those things matter too. Remember how you felt during the funny event. Were you surprised, excited, mortified? Let those emotions show on your face, and don't be afraid to use your hands to emphasize certain points.
So it's almost like acting. I have to channel my inner comedian.
In a way, yes. But remember, the goal isn't to be a stand-up comedian. It's to share your story authentically. Let your personality shine through.
That makes me feel better. Okay, so practice telling the story, let my emotions show, use my hands. Anything else I should keep in mind?
Tone of voice is incredibly important. Just like your facial expressions, your tone can convey humor, surprise, or even disbelief. Play around with different tones as you practice.
Interesting. It's like adding sound effects to the story with my voice. And speaking of recording, could that be helpful?
Absolutely. Recording yourself is a fantastic way to identify areas for improvement. You can listen back and pay attention to your pacing, pronunciation, and overall delivery.
It's like having a personal speech coach right in my pocket. But what if I make mistakes? I'm still learning English, and I'm bound to mess up.
Everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the learning process. And honestly, mistakes can sometimes make the story even funnier.
That's so true. I've definitely had times when my English slip-up had everyone in stitches.
Exactly. Don't let the fear of mistakes hold you back. People appreciate authenticity. They connect with realness. So embrace those imperfections and just have fun.
This is so encouraging. I'm actually starting to get excited about sharing my presentation story. But where do I share it? It's not like I'm going to walk around telling strangers about my disastrous presentation.
Huh. Well, you could, but there are more structured ways to do it. Have you considered English conversation practice groups?
Oh yeah, those could be perfect. I've heard there are online groups too.
Absolutely. There are tons of online communities where people practice their English. It's a supportive and safe environment to share your story and get feedback.
I'm adding that to my to-do list. And hey, maybe I could even make a video for our YouTube channel. That would give me a reason to practice and really polish the story.
Now you're talking. Sharing your story on video is an awesome way to reach a wider audience and boost your confidence. Plus, it could help other English learners who are working on their story class skills.
I love that. It's all about embracing those funny moments and sharing them with the world. Okay, so we've covered so much ground today, choosing the right story, building our vocabulary, structuring our narrative, using transitions, practicing our delivery. What's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to leave with?
I think the most important thing is to remember that sharing your stories, even if your English isn't perfect, is a powerful way to connect with others and grow as a speaker. Don't be afraid to be yourself, have fun, and let your personality shine through.
I love that. It's all about embracing those funny moments and sharing them with the world. You know, all this talk about funny stories has got me thinking, I need to find my funniest story and give it a try. What about you? Do you have a go-to funny story?
Oh, I have tons, but that's a story for another day.
Fair enough. We'll have to have you back for another deep dive sometime soon. But for now, I think it's time to wrap things up. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.
All right, well, this has been so much fun exploring how to tell funny stories in English, and especially for English learners. And we've learned a lot today, from choosing the right story to, really mastering those transitions. But remember, the most important thing is to just go for it. Don't be afraid to share those hilarious moments, even if your English isn't perfect.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your story is unique and your voice is valuable. And, laughter really is a universal language.
That's a great point. And you know what? I'm feeling so much more confident about sharing my own funny story now. I might even try out some of those idioms you mentioned.
I can't wait to hear it.
And hey, maybe some of our listeners out there are feeling inspired too. So if you're ready to share your funniest story in English, we'd love to hear it. Leave a comment below, join an English conversation group, or heck, even create a video. The possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. And remember, the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Well said. And to our fantastic listeners, we want to say a huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of funny stories. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab's YouTube channel for more tips and tricks on speaking English confidently, and most importantly, having fun while doing it. We'll see you in the next episode. Hello, and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're joined by Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
We're going to be diving into a topic that I think is super relevant for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
How to speak on your first day at college in English. So it's a big one, right? You're walking onto campus for the first time.
Absolutely.
You're seeing new people everywhere. There's all this excitement and energy.
New faces, yeah.
And you might be feeling a little bit nervous about,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
approaching people and starting conversations in English.
Yeah, especially in a new environment like that where everything is new.
Exactly.
It can feel a little overwhelming.
So where do we even begin? Like, what are some of the first things that we should keep in mind when we want to make a good impression and start those conversations?
Well, it may seem obvious, but I think introductions are key.
Right.
They're really your first opportunity to connect with someone.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Introductions. What's a good way to approach someone and introduce yourself on that first day?
You can keep it pretty simple.
Keep it simple, right?
Think of it as a formula. You start with, hi, my name is your name.
Right.
Give them a little context, like where you're from or what you're studying. So for instance, you could say, hi, I'm Sarah, I'm from Chicago, and I'm majoring in psychology.
I like that.
It's nice to meet you. Something like that.
Straightforward and effective.
Exactly.
But let's say we want to spice things up a little bit.
Okay.
How can we make those introductions more memorable or give people something to latch onto and start a conversation?
Yeah, I love that idea because, you can add a little detail about yourself that's a little more unique.
Okay.
Something to spark curiosity.
I like it.
So instead of just saying, I'm Mike from California, you could say, I'm Mike, I'm from California, and I'm a huge classic rock fan.
Nice.
Always looking for new bands to discover, something like that.
That's great. So
Yeah.
you're giving them a little hook
Exactly.
to start a conversation.
Right.
But it's not just about the words, is it?
No, it's not,
What else should we be thinking about?
nonverbal communication is huge.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a new environment and maybe you're not as confident in your language skills.
So what are some of those nonverbal cues that we should be paying attention to?
Well, first and foremost, you want to smile.
Smile.
A genuine smile can go a long way.
It's true.
It makes you seem more approachable and friendly.
What about eye contact? I know that's important in American culture, at least.
Absolutely.
But how do you strike that balance between making eye contact and being a little bit too intense?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to stare someone down.
Right.
But you do want to look at them when you're talking to them.
Okay.
Just glance away naturally. Yeah.
Make it a natural kind of flow.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the introduction down. We're smiling. We're making eye contact.
Right.
What comes next?
Well, sometimes those initial hellos can be followed by some awkward silence.
Oh.
So that's where you want to have a few open-ended questions up
Yeah.
your sleeve.
Okay.
Those can be really helpful.
Give me some examples.
Sure. So you could ask something like, what made you choose this college?
Okay.
Or what are you most looking forward to this semester?
I like those.
Yeah, just something to get the other person talking.
And get them sharing a little bit about themselves.
Exactly.
But it's a two-way street, right?
It is.
We don't want to just be firing off questions at people.
Well, no, you want to listen.
How do we show that we're listening?
Ask follow-up questions
Okay.
based on what they're saying.
So if someone says, oh, I'm really excited about this particular class.
You could say, oh, what is it about that class that interests you?
I see.
Show that you're actually paying attention
That's great.
to what they're saying.
And I think one of the things that a lot of English learners struggle with is moving beyond those one-word or short answers like yes and no.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap.
How do we push past that and give people a little bit more to work with?
Yeah, I think instead of just giving a yes or no answer, try adding a sentence or two
Okay.
to kind of elaborate on what thought.
So instead of just saying yes,
Right.
you might say,
You could say, yes, I love living in the city. There's always something going on, and I enjoy exploring new neighborhoods.
that's a great example.
So you're giving them
So you're giving them a little bit more to go on.
Exactly.
And showing that you're,
And that you're enthusiastic.
enthusiastic. There you go.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I've always found interesting about college is that there's a whole kind of lingo,
Oh, yeah.
a set of phrases.
Campus lingo.
It's like its own little world.
Yeah, so let's play a little game.
Okay.
I'm going to throw out a phrase, and you tell me what it actually means.
Okay, I like it.
On a college campus. So first one, what's up? So they're not actually asking you what's happening in the sky.
I see.
It's more of a greeting.
Okay.
Okay, how are you?
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay, how about, do you want to grab lunch?
that's a pretty straightforward one. They're asking you to go eat lunch with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
It's a good one.
Okay, but even with all these tips, I think it's natural to still feel a little bit nervous on your first day.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that normal?
Totally normal. I think everyone feels that way.
Even native English speakers?
Even native English speakers.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
new environment. You're meeting new people.
It's a big day.
It's a big day.
So how do we deal with those nerves? Any advice?
I think it helps to try and reframe those nerves as excitement.
Okay.
It's the same energy,
Interesting.
just channeled in a different direction.
I like that.
And remember, most people are in the same boat.
They are.
They're feeling a little bit nervous too.
So don't worry too much.
Exactly.
But let's be real.
Yeah,
We're going to make mistakes,
of course.
especially when we're speaking in a new language.
It's part of the process.
What do we do when that happens?
Just laugh it off, apologize if you need to,
Okay.
and keep going.
Keep going.
Most people are understanding. They appreciate the effort you're making.
Absolutely. And I can totally relate to that. I remember one time during my first week of college, I was so nervous that I accidentally called my professor Mom.
Oh my God.
It was so embarrassing.
I can imagine.
But you know what? He was totally cool about it.
That's great.
We all laughed. And it actually broke the ice a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes those awkward moments can turn into something positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've talked about introductions, we've talked about breaking the ice.
Right.
We've talked about active listening, but college is also a lot about group conversations.
Yeah.
How do we approach those?
Yeah, that can feel a little intimidating.
A little bit.
You've got a whole group of people.
Yeah.
You want to join in?
Yeah, how do we
So first, I would say just observe the group for a minute.
observe?
What's the energy like?
Okay.
Are they having a serious discussion or are they just chatting and laughing?
So get a feel for the vibe.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then look for a natural opening.
Okay.
Maybe someone says something that you really agree with.
Okay.
You can use a phrase like, I totally agree with that because,
Okay.
or that's an interesting point I was actually thinking.
So you're building on what they've already said.
Exactly.
And showing that you're engaged.
Right.
But what if we're completely lost?
Ask for clarification.
It's okay to do that.
Absolutely. It's much better to ask than to pretend you understand.
So how would we phrase that?
You could say something like, sorry, I'm not sure I follow. Could you explain that again?
Got it.
Or could you repeat that, please? I want to make sure I understand.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So before we actually, dive into all these conversations, are there any things that we can do to prepare ahead of time?
Practice.
Practice. Okay.
Practice makes perfect, right? So you can imagine different conversation scenarios.
Okay.
Maybe role play with a friend or a family member.
So like a little rehearsal.
Yeah, exactly.
What if we don't have someone to practice with?
There's tons of resources online.
Oh, okay.
You can watch videos of college students interacting.
Okay.
You can listen to podcasts about college life, lots of options.
Right.
And, you can even just talk to yourself in English.
Talk to yourself.
Practice introducing yourself.
Interesting.
Talk about your interest.
Okay.
It might feel silly,
Yeah.
but it can really help.
So it's all about getting comfortable with the language.
Exactly.
But I think sometimes it's not just about the practical skills.
Right.
It's about the mindset. Any advice on how we can approach those conversations with the right attitude?
I think one of the most important things is to remember that everyone feels a little awkward and uncertain on their first day.
Mhm.
It's a brand new experience.
True.
So be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself.
Cut yourself some slack.
I like that.
And remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn and grow.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate, it's okay to feel nervous.
Absolutely.
But with a little preparation and a positive attitude,
Yeah.
you can definitely rock those first day conversations.
I think so.
I think so too.
I got this.
We'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll be exploring the power of body language.
That's right.
Stay tuned.
See you then.
Welcome back to the Learn English Lab.
We're back.
And we're continuing our deep dive into, how to end those conversations on your first day of college.
All those new faces. Yeah.
Now, we talked in the last part about introductions, breaking the ice, asking questions.
Right. The basics.
But I want to talk about something that I think is really important, but often gets overlooked.
Okay. What's that?
Body language.
Ah, yes. Body language.
It's so crucial
It is. It really is.
because it can convey so much.
Absolutely. Even more so than our words sometimes.
Right. And I think especially for English learners, when you're maybe not as confident in your spoken English, your body language can really help to get your message across.
Yeah. Fill in those gaps.
So let's talk about some specific tips for using body language effectively on that first day.
Okay. Sounds good.
What are some of the things we should be thinking about?
Well, let's start with posture.
Okay.
Think about it when you see someone who's slouching or kind of hunched over.
Yeah.
What impression does that give you?
Not very confident.
Exactly.
Maybe a little bit closed off.
Right. Whereas someone who stands up straight, shoulders back, head held high,
Yeah.
they project confidence and openness.
It's like they're saying, I'm here and I'm ready to engage.
Exactly.
Okay, so posture check. What else?
Smiling, smile. Can't forget about that.
It's so important.
It is, a genuine smile can really put people at ease.
Makes you seem more approachable.
Absolutely.
But how about eye contact?
Ah, yes, eye contact, the tricky one.
It's important, but I also don't want to make people uncomfortable by staring them down.
Right, you don't want to be too intense.
So how do you find that balance?
You want to make eye contact when you're listening to someone.
Right.
And when you're talking to them.
Okay.
But just break it naturally from time to time.
Don't hold it for too long.
Exactly. Just glance away every so often.
Make it feel natural.
Exactly.
Now, there's another techniques that I've heard about called mirroring.
Oh, yes, mirroring. That's a good one.
Tell me about that.
So basically, you subtly reflect the other person's body language.
Oh, interesting.
So if they lean in, you might lean in a little bit too. If they have their arms crossed, you might do the same.
So you're kind of subconsciously saying, hey, we're on the same wavelength.
Exactly. It can help create a sense of rapport.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got posture, smiling, eye contact, mirroring. What about hand gestures.
Hand gestures, yeah. I mean, they can be great.
I've seen some people get a little carried away.
Right, you don't want to overdo it,
Yeah.
but using your hand list can definitely add emphasis.
Right.
And make you seem more expressive.
Like adding a little bit of flavor to your conversation.
Exactly.
So I think the takeaway here is that body language is a really powerful tool.
Absolutely.
And we should be paying attention to it.
It can make a big difference.
Especially in those first impressions.
Especially on that first day, yeah.
So stand tall, smile, make eye contact, use those hand gestures strategically, and most importantly, be yourself.
Yes, authenticity is key.
Absolutely.
Let your personality shine through.
We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up with some final thoughts. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. We've talked about a lot, introductions, body language, active listening.
Even some campus lingo.
But there's one more thing that I want to touch on
Okay.
before we wrap up.
I'm all yours.
And it's kind of the secret sauce.
Oh.
It ties everything together.
Okay, tell me more.
Authenticity.
Authenticity.
Being genuine.
Yes.
Letting your personality shine through.
That's so important.
Because you can have all the right words, you can have all the right body language.
Right.
But if you're not being yourself,
Yeah.
people can sense that.
Absolutely. They can tell if you're not being genuine.
It's like trying to fit into a mold that just doesn't quite work.
It just doesn't feel right.
So as you're going into those conversations on your first day, just remember,
Yeah.
relax.
Relax and be yourself.
Be yourself.
People will appreciate that.
Because ultimately, people connect with other people.
Exactly.
And they connect with people who are genuine and authentic.
Right. And, sometimes the best conversations are the ones that don't go according to plan.
Oh, absolutely.
It's those unexpected moments.
Yeah.
The shared laughter, the genuine connection.
That's what makes it memorable.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid to go off script a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe share a funny story or ask a question that's a little bit different.
Be curious.
Be curious. Exactly.
Let the conversation flow naturally.
Yeah. Let the conversation flow naturally.
Yeah. Let the conversation flow naturally.
So I think to wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
remember that confidence comes not just from the techniques,
Right.
but also from being comfortable with who you are
Absolutely.
and letting that shine through.
Embrace your unique perspective,
Yeah.
your experiences. They're valuable.
Absolutely.
So share them.
So every conversation is a chance to learn and grow.
It is.
And who knows, you might make some lifelong friends along the way.
That would be amazing.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
So just soak it all in, enjoy the experience, and remember, we believe in you.
I do.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive,
Yes.
don't forget to share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more English learning tips and tricks.
We'll see you next time.
See you soon. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab, a place to experiment and have fun with the English language. I'm your host, Mike, and today we're diving into something I think we all have in common.
Childhood.
Yeah, childhood. And to guide us on this trip down memory lane, we have the fantastic Sarah with us.
It's great to be here, Mike. It's interesting. We often think about language learning as, memorizing vocabulary and grammar, but there's this whole other layer. How do we express those unique individual experiences that shaped us as kids?
That's exactly what we're here to figure out. So listeners, get ready to unlock a whole new level of storytelling in English. Get ready to speak your childhood. All right, Sarah, where do we even begin with something as vast as childhood? I mean, we're talking years of memories here.
It's true. It can feel a bit overwhelming. Let's think about it like building with Legos. We start with those basic blocks, those core pieces. What were some of the key places in your childhood? And I don't just mean the obvious ones like home or school. Let's get specific. Maybe the secret hiding spot in the woods behind my house, or garden with those giant sunflowers, those kinds of details.
I love that. It's those specific details that make it personal, right? And that makes me think about the people, too. My childhood wouldn't be complete without my mischievous little brother always dragging us into some kind of trouble. So we've got family, friends, maybe even rivals from the playground, all those characters who were part of the story.
Absolutely. And as we start gathering these words, think about the emotions tied to them. How did these places and people make you feel? Were you carefree in the park, intimidated at school, or totally exuberant at birthday parties?
You know what you're saying makes me realize something. Learning to talk about childhood isn't just about grammar. It's about reconnecting with how it all felt back then. Now, you did mention grammar, and I know some of our listeners might be wondering about verb tenses. Are there any that work particularly well when we're talking about the past?
For sure. The past simple is going to be your go-to here. Think, I played, we visited, she laughed. This is how you lay out the events, the actions that happened.
Right, that gives us the backbone of the story. but how do we add more detail and really bring it to life?
That's where the past continuous comes in. It's like adding movement to a still photo. Instead of just saying, I played in the park, you could say, I was playing with my friends in the park when suddenly it adds that element of ongoing action or an unexpected turn of events.
Ooh, I like that. It creates a bit of suspense. What about used to? I feel like that phrase is perfect for childhood because it's all about things that happened regularly but don't anymore. Like, I used to collect those tiny toy cars. Can you believe it?
Exactly. Used to and even would can give your story that feeling of nostalgia, those habits or rituals that were unique to that time.
And don't those phrases also help us transition smoothly between different memories or parts of the story? It's like a subtle signal to the listener that we're shifting gears.
Definitely. And speaking of signals, here's another tip. Don't be shy about using classic storytelling phrases. Things like, I'll never forget the time, or one of my earliest memories is. These instantly let the listener know that something special is coming.
It's like saying, get ready to be transported back in time.
I like that.
But even with all this talk about specific words and grammar, it can still feel a little daunting to try and tackle your entire childhood. Are there any go-to topics that are easier to start with?
Absolutely. Describing your childhood home is always a great starting point. Think about what made it unique. Was it the creaky floorboards? The smell of baking cookies, the view from your bedroom window? Try to use all your senses to create a vivid picture for the listener.
Oh, I can practically smell those cookies now. You know what else always brings back a flood of memories? School days. Everybody has stories from school. Favorite subjects, funny teachers, embarrassing moments, maybe even that first crush.
It's true, and those school day stories are pretty universal, so they're a great way to connect with people from different backgrounds. You could even talk about school traditions in your country. Like here in the US, we have this thing called show and tell, where kids bring in something special from home to share with the class. It's a fun way to spark conversations and learn about each other's cultures.
That's a fun one. It reminds me of how much we used to love swapping stories with friends at recess. Speaking of fun, we have to talk about games and hobbies. I could go on for hours about the elaborate Lego worlds we used to create. How about you?
Oh, I was all about building forts, blankets, pillows, chairs. Anything we could get our hands on, we'd transform the living room into this magical fortress.
That's what's so great about it, isn't it? Those seemingly simple things become captivating when you share them with passion. And it encourages people to join in, ask questions, and share their own experiences.
You're absolutely right. And don't forget about family traditions. Those can be especially interesting for people from other cultures, holidays, special meals, maybe even some unique customs that are specific to your family.
It's like offering them a glimpse into a whole different world. Okay, Sarah, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, any last nuggets of wisdom for our listeners who are eager to start speaking their childhoods in English?
I would say the most important thing is to be descriptive. Use all your senses. What did things look, sound, smell, taste, and feel like? The more details you can provide, the more immersive your story will be for the listener. And don't forget, practice makes perfect. Talk to friends. Record yourself. Even write down your stories. The more you use the language, the more confident you'll become.
And most importantly,
don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a language. It's all part of the process.
That's such great advice, Sarah. Sometimes we forget that it's okay to stumble a bit, to experiment with the language. It's how we learn and grow.
Absolutely. Embrace those mistakes and see them as opportunities to improve.
Well said. Now, you mentioned using all of our senses to bring those stories to life. Could you give us an example of how we might do that?
Of course. Let's say you're describing your childhood home. Instead of just saying, my house was small, you could say, my house was this tiny, cozy cottage with a steep thatched roof that always smelled like damp leaves after a rainstorm. See how those added details create a much richer, more vivid image in the listener's mind?
It totally does. You're taking them right there with you. Now, what if someone is struggling to remember specific details? I mean, childhood was a long time ago.
That's a great point, Mike. Sometimes those memories are buried deep, but try focusing on a specific object or event. For example, if you're talking about your favorite toy, try to picture it in your mind. What did it look like? What was its texture? How did it make you feel? Even better, if you still have that toy, hold it in your hands as you speak. That tactile experience can really unlock memories and emotions.
That's brilliant. It's like giving your brain a little nudge in the right direction. What about those times when you know the word in your native language, but you just can't seem to find the English equivalent?
Don't let that stop you. Get creative, use synonyms, descriptions, even gestures to get your meaning across. Remember, communication is the goal. It's not about speaking perfectly, it's about connecting with others and sharing your experiences.
I love that. It's so freeing to remember that perfection isn't the goal. Now, I know some people might be hesitant to share personal stories, especially in a language they're still learning. What advice would you give to those who are feeling a bit shy?
That's totally understandable. It can feel vulnerable to open up about ourselves, especially in a language we're not completely comfortable with. Start small, share a short anecdote with a trusted friend or language partner, or try writing down your story first. This can help you organize your thoughts and build your confidence before sharing it verbally.
Those are really practical tips. And remember, listeners, you don't have to share anything you're not ready to. It's your story, and you get to decide how and when you want to tell it.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe by sharing your story, you'll inspire others to do the same.
It's like a ripple effect of storytelling and connection. And isn't that what language is all about? Building bridges between people and cultures.
It truly is. Now, speaking of cultural connections, I think it's important to mention that childhood experiences can vary greatly depending on where you grew up and the traditions you were exposed to.
That's a great point. So how do we navigate those cultural differences when sharing our childhood stories in English?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to embrace those differences. Share those unique customs and traditions that make your story special. You might need to provide a little extra context or explanation for listeners who aren't familiar with your culture.
Right, like a little mini cultural lesson woven into your story. That's fascinating.
Exactly, and be open to learning about other people's childhood experiences as well. Ask questions, be curious, and be respectful of different perspectives. It's a wonderful opportunity to broaden your horizons and gain a deeper understanding of the world around you.
You know, Sarah, you're reminding me of how much fun it can be to learn about different cultures. It's like taking a trip around the world without ever leaving your seat.
I agree, and who knows, maybe you'll even discover some unexpected similarities between your childhood and someone else's, despite your different backgrounds.
And that's the beauty of sharing our stories. We might come from different places, speak different languages, but at the end of the day, we all share this universal human experience called childhood. And through language, we can connect with each other on a deeper level and celebrate those shared memories.
That's beautifully said, Mike.
It's been such a fascinating conversation, Sarah. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this topic.
Me too. There's so much more we could explore.
Definitely. Well, for our listeners who are feeling inspired to speak their childhoods in English, what are some final words of encouragement you'd like to leave them with?
I would say don't overthink it. Just start talking. The words will come. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun and enjoy the journey of reliving those precious memories.
I love that. Keep it simple, have fun, and let those stories flow. Wow, what a journey that was. It feels like we've just skimmed the surface, but hopefully this deep dive has given you the tools to start exploring your own EWN childhood in English.
Absolutely. And remember, as you're telling those stories, think about the emotions you want to evoke in your listener. How can you use those sensory details to make them feel like they're right there with you experiencing those moments firsthand?
That's such a powerful point, Sarah. It's not just about recounting the facts. It's about transporting your listener back to that time and place, making them feel those same feelings of joy, wonder, maybe even a little bit of mischief.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment with language. Play with different words, try out new phrases, and see what resonates with you. Remember, language is a tool for self-expression, so make it your own.
You know what you're saying reminds me of something I used to do as a kid. I would take my favorite storybooks and try to rewrite them in my own words, adding my own little twists and turns. It was like creating my own little world, and it really helped me develop a love for language.
That's wonderful, Mike. It just goes to show that storytelling is a natural human instinct. We all have stories to tell, and childhood is a treasure trove of those experiences.
It truly is. And I think sometimes as adults, we forget the importance of playfulness and imagination. But tacking into those childhood memories can help us reconnect with that sense of wonder and bring a fresh perspective to our lives.
I couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up, I want to remind our listeners that everyone's childhood is unique and valuable. No matter where you come from or what language you speak, your story deserves to be heard.
Beautifully said, Sarah. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace your inner child, dust off those memories, and start sharing your stories with the world. And remember, the Learn English Lab is here to support you every step of the way.
It's been such a joy exploring this topic with you today, Mike. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure was all mine, Sarah. And to all our wonderful listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of childhood memories. We hope you've learned some valuable tips and feel inspired to share your own stories in English. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun and insightful deep dives into the world of English. Until next time, keep practicing and keep those childhood stories coming.
See you next time.
It's like a ripple effect of storytelling and connection. And isn't that what language is all about, building bridges between people and cultures?
It truly is. Now, speaking of cultural connections, I think it's important to mention that childhood experiences can vary greatly depending on where you grew up and the traditions you were exposed to.
That's a great point. So how do we navigate those cultural differences when sharing our childhood stories in English?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to embrace those differences. Share those unique customs and traditions that make your story special. You might need to provide a little extra context or explanation for listeners who aren't familiar with your culture.
Right, like a little mini cultural lesson woven into your story. It's fascinating.
Precisely. And be open to learning about other people's childhood experiences as well. Ask questions, be curious, and be respectful of different perspectives. It's a wonderful opportunity to broaden your horizons and gain a deeper understanding of the world around you.
You know, Sarah, you're reminding me of how much fun it can be to learn about different cultures. It's like taking a trip around the world without ever leaving your seat.
I agree. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover some unexpected similarities between your childhood and someone else's, despite your different backgrounds.
And that's the beauty of sharing our stories. We might come from different places, speak different languages, but at the end of the day, we all share this universal human experience called childhood. And through language, we can connect with each other on a deeper level and celebrate those shared memories.
That's beautifully said, Mike.
It's been such a fascinating conversation, Sarah. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this topic.
Me too. There's so much more we could explore.
Definitely. Well, for our listeners who are feeling inspired to speak their childhoods in English, what are some final words of encouragement you'd like to leave them with?
I would say don't overthink it. Just start talking. The words will come. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun and enjoy the journey of reliving those precious memories.
I love that. Keep it simple, have fun, and let those stories flow. Wow, what a journey that was. It feels like we've just skimmed the surface, but hopefully this deep dive has given you the tools to start exploring your own childhood in English. What are some early memories you want to share now? Let us know in the comments.
And be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun and insightful deep dives into the world of English. Until next time, keep practicing and keep those childhood stories coming.
See you next time. What are some early memories you want to share now? Let us know in the comments.
And be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun and insightful deep dives into the world of English. Until next time, keep practicing and keep those childhood stories coming.
See you next time. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab, a place to experiment and have fun with the English language. I'm your host, Mike, and today we're diving into something I think we all have in common.
Childhood.
Yeah, childhood. And to guide us on this trip down memory lane, we have the fantastic Sarah with us.
It's great to be here, Mike. You know, it's interesting. We often think about language learning as, memorizing vocabulary and grammar, but there's this whole other layer. How do we express those unique individual experiences that shaped us as kids?
That's exactly what we're here to figure out. So, listeners, get ready to unlock a whole new level of storytelling in English. Get ready to speak your childhood. All right, Sarah, where do we even begin with something as vast as childhood? I mean, we're talking years of memories here.
It's true. It can feel a bit overwhelming. Let's think about it like building with Legos. We start with those basic blocks, those core pieces. What were some of the key places in your childhood? And I don't just mean the obvious ones like home or school. Let's get specific. Maybe the secret hiding spot in the woods behind my house, or garden with those giant sunflowers, those kinds of details.
I love that. It's those specific details that make it personal, right? And that makes me think about the people, too. My childhood wouldn't be complete without my mischievous little brother always dragging us into some kind of trouble. So we've got family, friends, maybe even rivals from the playground, all those characters who were part of the story.
Absolutely. And as we start gathering these words, think about the emotions tied to them. How did these places and people make you feel? Were you carefree in the park, intimidated at school, or totally exuberant at birthday parties?
You know what you're saying makes me realize something. Learning to talk about childhood isn't just about grammar. It's about reconnecting with how it all felt back then. Now, you did mention grammar, and I know some of our listeners might be wondering about verb tenses. Are there any that work particularly well when we're talking about the past?
For sure. The past simple is going to be your go-to here. Think, I played, we visited, she laughed. This is how you lay out the events, the actions that happened.
Right, that gives us the backbone of the story. But how do we add more detail and really bring it to life?
That's where the past continuous comes in. It's like adding movement to a still photo. Instead of just saying, I played in the park, you could say, I was playing with my friends in the park when suddenly it adds that element of ongoing action or an unexpected turn of events.
Ooh, I like that. It creates a bit of suspense. What about used to? I feel like that phrase is perfect for childhood because it's all about things that happened regularly but don't anymore. Like, I used to collect those tiny toy cars. Can you believe it?
Exactly. Used to, and even would, can give your story that feeling of nostalgia, those habits or rituals that were unique to that time.
And don't those phrases also help us transition smoothly between different memories or parts of the story? It's like a subtle signal to the listener that we're shifting gears.
Definitely. And speaking of signals, here's another tip. Don't be shy about using classic storytelling phrases. Things like, I'll never forget the time, or one of my earliest memories is. These instantly let the listener know that something special is coming.
It's like saying, get ready to be transported back in time.
I like that.
But even with all this talk about specific words and grammar, it can still feel a little daunting to try and tackle your entire childhood. Are there any go-to topics that are easier to start with?
Absolutely. Describing your childhood home is always a great starting point. Think about what made it unique. Was it the creaky floorboards, the smell of baking cookies, the view from your bedroom window? Try to use all your senses to create a vivid picture for the listener.
Oh, I could practically smell those cookies now. You know what else always brings back a flood of memories? School days. Everybody has stories from school. Favorite subjects, funny teachers, embarrassing moments, maybe even that first crush.
It's true, and those school day stories are pretty universal, so they're a great way to connect with people from different backgrounds. You could even talk about school traditions in your country. Like here in the US, we have this thing called show and tell, where kids bring in something special from home to share with the class. It's a fun way to spark conversations and learn about each other's cultures.
That's a fun one. It reminds me of how much we used to love swapping stories with friends at recess. Speaking of fun, we have to talk about games and hobbies. I could go on for hours about the elaborate Lego worlds we used to create. How about you?
Oh, I was all about building forts, blankets, pillows, chairs. Anything we could get our hands on, we'd transform the living room into this magical fortress.
That's what's so great about it, isn't it? Those seemingly simple things become captivating when you share them with passion. And it encourages people to join in, ask questions, and share their own experiences.
You're absolutely right. And don't forget about family traditions. Those can be especially interesting for people from other cultures, holidays, special meals, maybe even some unique customs that are specific to your family.
It's like offering them a glimpse into a whole different world. Okay, Sarah, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, any last nuggets of wisdom for our listeners who are eager to start speaking their childhoods in English?
I would say the most important thing is to be descriptive. Use all your senses. What did things look, sound, smell, taste, and feel like? The more details you can provide, the more immersive your story will be for the listener. And don't forget, practice makes perfect. Talk to friends. Record yourself. Even write down your stories. The more you use the language, the more confident you'll become.
And most importantly,
don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a language. It's all part of the process.
That's such great advice, Sarah. Sometimes we forget that it's okay to stumble a bit, to experiment with the language. It's how we learn and grow.
Absolutely. Embrace those mistakes and see them as opportunities to improve.
Well said. Now, you mentioned using all of our senses to bring those stories to life. Could you give us an example of how we might do that?
Of course. Let's say you're describing your childhood home. Instead of just saying, my house was small, you could say, my house was this tiny, cozy cottage with a steep thatched roof that always smelled like damp leaves after a rainstorm. See how those added details create a much richer, more vivid image in the listener's mind?
It totally does. You're taking them right there with you. Now, what if someone is struggling to remember specific details? I mean, childhood was a long time ago.
That's a great point, Mike. Sometimes those memories are buried deep. But try focusing on a specific object or event. For example, if you're talking about your favorite toy, try to picture it in your mind. What did it look like? What was its texture? How did it make you feel? Even better, if you still have that toy, hold it in your hands as you speak. That tactile experience can really unlock memories and emotions.
That's brilliant. It's like giving your brain a little nudge in the right direction. What about those times when you know the word in your native language, but you just can't seem to find the English equivalent?
Don't let that stop you. Get creative, use synonyms, descriptions, even gestures to get your meaning across. Remember, communication is the goal. It's not about speaking perfectly, it's about connecting with others and sharing your experiences.
I love that. It's so freeing to remember that perfection isn't the goal. Now, I know some people might be hesitant to share personal stories, especially in a language they're still learning. What advice would you give to those who are feeling a bit shy?
That's totally understandable. It can feel vulnerable to open up about ourselves, especially in a language we're not completely comfortable with. Start small, share a short anecdote with a trusted friend or language partner, or try writing down your story first. This can help you organize your thoughts and build your confidence before sharing it verbally.
Those are really practical tips. And remember, listeners, you don't have to share anything you're not ready to. It's your story, and you get to decide how and when you want to tell it.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe by sharing your story, you'll inspire others to do the same.
It's like a ripple effect of storytelling and connection. And isn't that what language is all about? Building bridges between people and cultures.
It truly is. Now, speaking of cultural connections, I think it's important to mention that childhood experiences can vary greatly depending on where you grew up and the traditions you were exposed to.
That's a great point. So how do we navigate those cultural differences when sharing our childhood stories in English?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to embrace those differences. Share those unique customs and traditions that make your story special. You might need to provide a little extra context or explanation for listeners who aren't familiar with your culture.
Right, like a little mini cultural lesson woven into your story. That's fascinating.
Exactly, and be open to learning about other people's childhood experiences as well. Ask questions, be curious, and be respectful of different perspectives. It's a wonderful opportunity to broaden your horizons and gain a deeper understanding of the world around you.
You know, Sarah, you're reminding me of how much fun it can be to learn about different cultures. It's like taking a trip around the world without ever leaving your seat.
I agree, and who knows, maybe you'll even discover some unexpected similarities between your childhood and someone else's, despite your different backgrounds.
And that's the beauty of sharing our stories. We might come from different places, speak different languages, but at the end of the day, we all share this universal human experience called childhood. And through language, we can connect with each other on a deeper level and celebrate those shared memories.
That's beautifully said, Mike.
It's been such a fascinating conversation, Sarah. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this topic.
Me too. There's so much more we could explore.
Definitely. Well, for our listeners who are feeling inspired to speak their childhoods in English, what are some final words of encouragement you'd like to leave them with?
I would say don't overthink it. Just start talking. The words will come. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun and enjoy the journey of reliving those precious memories.
I love that. Keep it simple, have fun, and let those stories flow. Wow, what a journey that was. It feels like we've just skimmed the surface, but hopefully this deep dive has given you the tools to start exploring your own EWN childhood in English.
Absolutely. And remember, as you're telling those stories, think about the emotions you want to evoke in your listener. How can you use those sensory details to make them feel like they're right there with you experiencing those moments firsthand?
That's such a powerful point, Sarah. It's not just about recounting the facts. It's about transporting your listener back to that time and place, making them feel those same feelings of joy, wonder, maybe even a little bit of mischief.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment with language. Play with different words, try out new phrases, and see what resonates with you. Remember, language is a tool for self-expression, so make it your own.
You know what you're saying reminds me of something I used to do as a kid. I would take my favorite storybooks and try to rewrite them in my own words, adding my own little twists and turns. It was like creating my own little world, and it really helped me develop a love for language.
That's wonderful, Mike. It just goes to show that storytelling is a natural human instinct. We all have stories to tell, and childhood is a treasure trove of those experiences.
It truly is. And I think sometimes as adults, we forget the importance of playfulness and imagination. But tacking into those childhood memories can help us reconnect with that sense of wonder and bring a fresh perspective to our lives.
I couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up, I want to remind our listeners that everyone's childhood is unique and valuable. No matter where you come from or what language you speak, your story deserves to be heard.
Beautifully said, Sarah. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace your inner child, dust off those memories, and start sharing your stories with the world. And remember, the Learn English Lab is here to support you every step of the way.
It's been such a joy exploring this topic with you today, Mike. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure was all mine, Sarah. And to all our wonderful listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of childhood memories. We hope you've learned some valuable tips and feel inspired to share your own stories in English. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun and insightful deep dives into the world of English. Until next time, keep practicing and keep those childhood stories coming.
See you next time.
It's like a ripple effect of storytelling and connection. And isn't that what language is all about, building bridges between people and cultures?
It truly is. Now, speaking of cultural connections, I think it's important to mention that childhood experiences can vary greatly depending on where you grew up and the traditions you were exposed to.
That's a great point. So how do we navigate those cultural differences when sharing our childhood stories in English?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to embrace those differences. Share those unique customs and traditions that make your story special. You might need to provide a little extra context or explanation for listeners who aren't familiar with your culture.
Right, like a little mini cultural lesson woven into your story. It's fascinating.
Precisely. And be open to learning about other people's childhood experiences as well. Ask questions, be curious, and be respectful of different perspectives. It's a wonderful opportunity to broaden your horizons and gain a deeper understanding of the world around you.
You know, Sarah, you're reminding me of how much fun it can be to learn about different cultures. It's like taking a trip around the world without ever leaving your seat.
I agree. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover some unexpected similarities between your childhood and someone else's, despite your different backgrounds.
And that's the beauty of sharing our stories. We might come from different places, speak different languages, but at the end of the day, we all share this universal human experience called childhood. And through language, we can connect with each other on a deeper level and celebrate those shared memories.
That's beautifully said, Mike.
It's been such a fascinating conversation, Sarah. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this topic.
Me too. There's so much more we could explore.
Definitely. Well, for our listeners who are feeling inspired to speak their childhoods in English, what are some final words of encouragement you'd like to leave them with?
I would say don't overthink it. Just start talking. The words will come. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun and enjoy the journey of reliving those precious memories.
I love that. Keep it simple, have fun, and let those stories flow. Wow, what a journey that was. It feels like we've just skimmed the surface, but hopefully this deep dive has given you the tools to start exploring your own childhood in English. What are some early memories you want to share now? Let us know in the comments.
And be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun and insightful deep dives into the world of English. Until next time, keep practicing and keep those childhood stories coming.
See you next time. What are some early memories you want to share now? Let us know in the comments.
And be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun and insightful deep dives into the world of English. Until next time, keep practicing and keep those childhood stories coming.
See you next time.